Chapter 3711. This immortal friend is... Zhang Daren's expression did not change as he glanced at the girl and asked. Sun Kong, who was standing at the side, was a little angry. He glared at the woman. Zhai Xingzi's face was very awkward as he quickly smiled and said, "This is my wife's good friend." Then Zhai Xingzi said to Gusu Qiudi, "Qiu, why don't you introduce her? No need to trouble Qiu's sister." That girl was not polite as she looked at everyone and said, "This one is Gong Shu Exian." Then she looked at Xiao Hua and said proudly, "You're Xiao Hua, right? You look very ordinary, ah. Also, you used 1,000 years to cultivate to 4th level middle stage. You can't be considered talent. However, when I saw you hiding behind everyone and apologizing to them, I feel that you're just very good at hiding yourself. Then you reveal yourself when others are not paying attention, making others feel that you're very outstanding. So much so that Qiu's sister was fooled by you and said a lot of good things about you in front of me. Looks like you're not worthy, ah." Exin. Gusu Qiudi was very embarrassed. She did not care about anything else as she quickly stopped Gongshu Exin and smiled to everyone. "This Gongshu Exin is my good friend. She comes from the Gongshu clan and is a famous array master. Gongshu clan is Gongshu clan. Gongshu Exin is Gongshu Exin. Qiu's sister, how can you be so unscrupulous?" Gongshu Exin frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "Could it be that you've been tainted by the secular world after being banished to the mortal world?" Gusu Qiudi blushed and did not know how to answer. This question with a double meaning was really awesome, ah. Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and smiled. "This one is the Xiao Hua you're talking about. Of course, this one does not know how Qiu's sister praised this one. This one does not care how others view this one. This one only cares about the 3 Dao friends of my Dao sect who were on par with each other and fought to the death in the Jade Pavilion gathering because of the Confucian cultivator's trap. Now that they saw their own shortcomings and knew their mistakes, they were brave enough to admit it. Even if these few simple words could not eliminate each other's wariness, but this is still an improvement. Although it's just a little bit, it's enough for them to sit together, enough for them to have the possibility of working together. What's the use of saying so much? These were all fake. Humans were selfish. When there was no conflict of interest, they could be closer than brothers. Once there was a conflict of interest, who would be able to stay true to their hearts? Who would be able to restrain their own selfish desires? Who can restrain their greed?" Gongshu Isin retorted without any trace of politeness. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Gongshu Exin. He said with a smile, "Miss is very insightful and understand a lot. It's a pity. You've lost a lot because of this. Old Senior Xiao, save it." Gongshu Exin said coldly, "In this world, there are too many hypocrites like you. That's why the world is so foul. If everyone was as magnanimous as me, how could there be so much trouble?" Exin, take a look. Gusu Qiudi raised her hand. It was the location of the Misty Mountain Maze. She smiled and said, "That is the famous Misty Mountain Maze. No one has been able to break it for tens of millions of years. Come, I will accompany you to take a look." Hearing this, Gongshu Exin's eyes lit up. She said anxiously, "Is that so? Right here? Let's go. Sister will accompany me to take a look." Gusu Qiudi winked at Xiao Hua and left with Gongshu Exin. Xiao Hua touched his nose helplessly and looked at Zhai Xingzi, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Zhai Xingzi, what's the matter with this girl?" Sun Kong Shangren didn't care so much and shouted, "If Dao Xiao was not here, don't blame this old man for not giving face." Sorry. Zhai Xingzi knew he was in the wrong and hurriedly said with a smile, "I believe Dao Xiao has already told you 2 fellow Taoists. As soon as this old man arrived here, I heard this was the Misty Mountain Maze. I began to plan how to break this great formation. My humble wife transmitted that she knew a great formation master. This old man knew that our Dao sect formation, Dao, had been lost for a long time. If we could find a great formation master, it would naturally be of great help to us. Therefore, this old man didn't tell Dao Xiao. I wanted to give everyone a surprise and went with my humble wife to find her. Unexpectedly, this Lady Gongshu was really famous. There were many people begging her to break formations. She wouldn't meet with ordinary people. Because my humble wife was close friends with her, my humble wife was able to meet her. Unfortunately, when my humble wife met her, the Gongshu clan's clan head happened to have a clan order for her to help someone set up a formation. Naturally, she didn't dare to disobey the clan order. This old man and my humble wife could only accompany her. See, we were delayed after a round trip. However, this trip also broadened this old man's horizons. This Gongshu Exian's formation Dao is indeed formidable. That a clan within 1,000 li radius was protected by her formation. In this old man's eyes, without the strength of mid-5th level origin energy, I'm afraid it's impossible to break through. Sun Kong Shangren sucked in a breath and said in surprise, "This little girl seems to only be mid-4th level origin energy. The formation she set up is actually so formidable? That's not the only thing that's formidable." Zhai Xingzi said with a smile, "Brother Sun Kong, do you know why this little girl is so arrogant and doesn't put us late-stage nascent soul cultivators in her eyes? Why?" Even Zhang Daoran was curious in his heart. "Because," Zhai Xingzi said in a low voice, "this Lady Gongshu is only around 600 years old this year." Hiss! Zhang Daoran sucked in a breath of cold air. Sun Kong Shangren directly shouted, "Damn it! How is that possible? This girl is only around 600 years old. If she's this old man's disciple, I'm afraid she hasn't even cultivated the spirit solitude yet. If her talent is better, she should be able to cultivate to mid-golden core stage." Zhai Xingzi said with a smile, "When my humble wife told this old man was also shocked. This old man has never seen a cultivator who cultivates at such a godly speed." Ga. Sun Kong Shangren laughed. "You're Xiao Hua right. You look very ordinary. Moreover, you used 1,000 years to cultivate to mid-4th level origin energy. You can't be considered a genius." Sun Kong Shangren's voice was still sharp, obviously imitating Gongshu Exian. Hearing this, Zhai Xingzi laughed loudly. Even Zhang Daoran shook his head slightly. At this time, who still didn't know what Gusa Qiu Di was thinking. She obviously praised Xiao Hua like a flower, wanting to get Gongshu Exian closer to Xiao Hua, who knew that she didn't even put Xiao Hua in her eyes. Xiao Hua didn't care. He touched his nose and said, "Actually, the most amazing thing is not this." "Oh, what else is there? How do you know?" Zhai Xingzi was very stunned. Soon after, he somewhat understood. In Daoist, Xiao must have heard of Gongshu Exian before. "No, this Xiao has never heard of Lady Gongshu's name," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Today is the first time this Xiao has seen her." "Then how do you know?" Sun Kong Shangren was also very curious. "Very simple," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "But those who are infatuated with the path of formation will inevitably have distractions and can't concentrate on cultivation. Yet this Lady Gongshu actually used 600 years of cultivation to reach mid-4th level origin energy. Moreover, her path of formation has reached large success. Normal talent is very difficult to reach." Right, that's exactly the case." Zhai Xingzi suddenly realized and nodded. No wonder when this old man praised her for her high cultivation at a young age, she was still somewhat disdainful. If Qiu wasn't beside me, she would definitely ridicule this old man. Ignorant of worldly affairs, only looking at one's heart, ignoring worldly affairs, and concentrating on cultivation, Zhang Daoran also understood. It seems that there are gains and losses. She is a disciple of the Gongshu family. Her starting point is different from ours. Even if she has flaws on her body, it doesn't count for much in the eyes of others. Sun Kong Shangren smiled coldly. Xiao Hua blinked his eyes and said thoughtfully, "Isn't this what the people of the secular world say? A white face covers 100 ugliness. Ha, this girl is not only white, but also not ugly." Sun Kong Shangren laughed loudly. The group of disciples standing at the side also couldn't help but laugh. "Let's go. We should also go take a look at the Great Formation." Xiao Hua knew that Sun Kong Shangren was teasing him, but he didn't care. fellow Taoist has already reached this level. Even if they don't become sworn brothers, what difference is there between them? Good, let's also take a look at this Gongshu family girl's methods. Zhai Xingzi extended his hand and invited Zhang Daoran to go first. Zhang Daoran thought for a moment, nodded at everyone, and flew up first. He was the oldest, and his cultivation had also reached the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Not counting Xiao Hua's methods, just looking at Xiao Hua's cultivation, it was reasonable for Zhang Daoran to be the leader. Fellow Taoists, please go first. Xiao Hua saw Zhang Daoran fly up and said with a bitter smile, I was just ridiculed by the little girl, so I'll look for confidence from fellow Taoist. Taoist is already not bad. Zhai Xingzi smiled. Seeing that Sun Kong Shangren didn't move, he cupped his hands and flew up with Zhang Daoran. Sun Kong Shangren waited for Zhai Xingzi to leave, then smiled and followed behind. Xiao Hua flew at the back. In this way, the position of the 4 Taoists of the hidden immortal continent was confirmed. The group of cultivators did not release their divine sense. After flying for several li, they saw a huge mountain that looked like a steamed bun covering an area of 100 li. The mountain was covered with strange rocks, and there were small bumps that looked like stone chains tied to the mountain peak. Looking at the bottom of the mountain, they saw a meandering river rushing into the mountain peak from one end, then rushing out from the other side. It made a few twists and turns at the foot of the mountain, then plunged back into the mountain peak. When it came out again, it was on the other side of the mountain. After a few more twists and turns, a huge river surrounded the entire mountain peak on the ground. There were some green trees on the mountain, and they were scattered very unevenly. Similarly, there were also some thorns mixed with these green trees. Occasionally, some strange hissing sound would come from somewhere in the mountain, but when they looked, they didn't see any wild beasts. Chapter 37:12. Similarly, the river at the edge of the mountain continued to flow, but there was a hint of green fluorescence in it. There were no fish or aquatic plants to be seen. At the riverside, there were also fist-sized cobblestones. Each one was smoother than the next, shining under the sunlight. Aquatic plants that were usually seen at the riverside were nowhere to be seen here. Only a few thousand feet away from the riverside, there were sparse aquatic plants and moss. Only then did some tiny grasshoppers and other small things become active. The mountain looked a little strange, but when one's divine sense swept out, there were no fluctuations of magic power. Even the chi of heaven and earth was no different from other places. There were no signs of condensation. Furthermore, at the far end of the mountain, there was a large forest. The trees were lush, and the wind blew. It was full of vitality. Apart from the place where Xiao Hua and the others came from, there was a large flat area that was several li wide. On the other side of the mountain, there were even taller mountain ranges. It seemed that those 2 mountain ranges were precipitous and had strange peaks that were even more imposing than this mountain. When Xiao Hua and the others arrived, Gusu Qiudi and Gongshu Isin weren't near them. They probably went to the side to explore. Xiao Hua and the others didn't mind. Zhang Daoran looked to the left, then turned to Shui Ping and the others and said, After I got your jade eyes, I studied it carefully. I found that your opinions were not unanimous. Some said this was the 4 Gates Dragon Binding Formation. Some said it was the Milky Way Spirit Sealing Formation, and some said it was the Goldwater Flathill Formation. Now that we're going to break the formation, we have to understand the formation first. Shui Ping said respectfully, Senior, please know that I was the first to arrive at this place according to the map. However, I'm not well-versed in the Tao of array formations. Based on the trajectory of the mountain and the few jade eyes I have, I discovered that the ridges on the mountain are like chains. Furthermore, the mountain is above the water, which is very similar to the 4 Gates Dragon Binding array passed down in ancient times. As for the other formations, they are the opinions of the other Taoists. Of course, I know that our cultivation is shallow and our knowledge is even more limited. These things are recorded in the jade eyes for reference. It's nothing. And Zhang Daoran nodded, then looked towards Zhai Xingzi and Xiao Hua, asking, Fellow Taoists, what do you think? Zhai Xingzi smiled and said, I've thought about it before. and I've even looked at the terrain here. But now that the formation master of the Gongshu family is here, I'd better not embarrass myself. Ha, that's right. Xiaohua also said with a smile. Everyone has their shortcomings and strengths. The matter of breaking the array should be left to Miss Gongshu. When Zhang Daoran was about to speak, Sun Kong waved his hand and said, although the girl from the Gongshu family is a formation master, all she knows is origin formations. We are Dao sect cultivators, and Senior Song Longzi's cave is also a Dao sect formation. Even if we listen to the girl's opinion, we can't embarrass the Dao sect. We still have to say what we want to say. This old man had some misgivings earlier. Now, I'm going to take a closer look. When I find something, I'll discuss it with you. All right. Zhang Daoran nodded. This old man will go with you. Then he said to Xiao Hua, Brother Xiao, follow fellow Taoist Jia Xing to find the girl from the Gongshu family. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, that girl is obviously disgusted with me. I'd better not provoke her. Fellow Taoist Jia Xing can go by himself. Fine. Jia Xingzi knew that Gusa Chiodi helped Xiao Hua and felt a little self-defeating. He smiled and said, this old man will go by himself. Spiritual master, take these disciples and stand guard by the side. After saying that, the three of them flew away. Xiao Hua said to Xue Ping and the others, let's go. Take this old man and take a look at this large array. Yes. Xue Ping and the others were very respectful. They took Xiao Hua from the foot of the mountain and explored bit by bit. As they walked, they explained to Xiao Hua and took out the jade eyes from time to time to explain. At first, Xiao Hua only nodded slightly and didn't speak, as if he didn't know anything about arrays. However, after half a meal, when Xue Ping pointed to a place and explained his array, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and pointed to that place to refute Xue Ping. He also began to explain the method of setting up the array in simple terms. Although Xiao Hua only spoke to Fu Jiwen, Xue Ping and the others heard him clearly. At first, other than Fu Jiwen who listened carefully, the others didn't care. However, gradually, a few cultivators who had studied the large array in depth, including Xue Ping, began to change their expressions. Their faces became more respectful and admiring. They compared the jade eyes and the large array's problems with Xiao Hua's explanation and solved them one by one. Although the other cultivators didn't understand the Tao of arrays, they knew that Xiao Hua also knew about arrays. They hurriedly listened attentively, unwilling to let go of this rare opportunity. Xiao Hua led the group of cultivators and explained as they flew. He also asked the cultivators who had studied the array to share their opinions. Although the mountain was only 50 kilometers in size, it took a lot of time to fly around. However, when the group of cultivators flew back to their original place, they still didn't see Jia Xingzi or Zhang Daoran's summons. Xiao Hua understood that Gongshu Yisin and Sun Kong must have encountered a difficult problem and didn't dare to easily break the array. In fact, although Xiao Hua himself taught Fu Jiwen and the others a lot of the Tao of arrays based on this large array, it had nothing to do with breaking the array. He himself was also confused about this large array. This was a large array set up by a cultivator who had passed the tribulation. How could it be easy to break? Fu Jiwen, according to what I said, take a look at it yourself. This kind of ancient forbidden array is really hard to come by. It's a good opportunity. Xiao Hua waved his hand. It's quite difficult to get started with the Tao of arrays, but you have the foundation after all. Now that you've combined it with this large array, you'll be able to grasp it well. Of course, what I said is only my understanding. It's only a general explanation of the array and the array collected by Xue Ping and the others. It's still very far from breaking the array. Or to put it bluntly, I'm just drawing on gourds and ladles. What I said has nothing to do with the real Misty Mountain Maze array. Do you understand? Yes, this junior understands. Fu Jiwen replied respectfully. Senior, you're just stringing together the Tao of arrays that Xue Ping and the others found. It has nothing to do with the Misty Mountain Maze array. This junior doesn't dare to rashly break the array based on what I just learned. It's good that you understand. Xiao Hua nodded and motioned for Fu Jiwen to comprehend it himself. Shui Ping and the others were well aware of this and bowed to Xiaohua. Thank you, Senior. Then, they flew to various places and combined what Xiaohua said to verify what they had learned. Their previous thoughts were very simple. No matter what kind of ray it was, they just needed to break it. However, now that they saw a late-stage nascent soul senior being so serious and not daring to casually make a move, they rejoiced even more. Xiaohua flew into the sky and scanned with his divine sense. As expected, Gongshu Exian in front of him was frowning. She raised her right index finger and gently scratched her nose. A faint silver light flashed between her eyes. It was obvious that she had some unresolved questions. Looking to the right, Venerable Master Sun Kong had already released Chong Gong. The monkey was also flying in the air, its eyes flashing with brilliance. Its long tail shook slightly in the air. The monkey flew to one place after another, not staying for long at any place. Venerable Master Sun Kong's expression was somewhat unsightly. Zhai Xingzi saw Xiao Hua flying over and was about to come over. Xiao Hua waved his hand at him and transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to come over. I'll go take a look too. Oh, Taoist knows about arrays too? Zhai Xingzi was a little surprised, but he didn't move. Xiao Hua smiled. I know a little, but compared to the Gongshu family's girl, I'm still lacking a lot. Seeing Xiao Hua fly away, Zhai Xingzi's expression changed. He transmitted his voice to Gusu Chiodi. When Gusu Chiodi heard that Xiao Hua also knew about arrays, she couldn't help but be stunned. She took a few more glances at Xiao Hua's back. Clearly, the impression Xiao Hua gave her was even more mysterious. Meanwhile, Xiao Hua flew to the other side of the mountain. He raised his hand and patted. It was really between his eyebrows. He saw that the delusion breaker Dharma eye was flashing with a dark green halo. The Dharma eye gradually opened, and the silver-white pupils were revealed without any emotions. Hiss! When the Dharma eye saw the situation in front of him, Xiao Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that below him, an oval-shaped light circle was flashing with a faint golden and green brilliance. Vaguely, there were some words flashing within the golden brilliance and green brilliance. However, Xiao Hua's Dharma, I couldn't distinguish them clearly. Moreover, this golden and green brilliance was very restrained. There wasn't even a trace of ripple spreading out. There was even a slightly black fog blocking the surface of the brilliance. However, this fog was extremely thin, as if it was transparent. Not only that, outside of this fog, there were chain-like brilliances that crisscrossed and bound the entire chicken. These chains not only blocked the golden and green brilliance, but also locked the fog. Opposite these chains, there was a thin and long green belt of light. It pierced through a section of the chicken like a needle piercing through a seam. Within the halo, it pierced through the chicken where the chains weren't. The chains were outside, the belt of light was inside. The chains didn't move, and the belt of light flowed. They seemed to really complement each other, imprisoning the entire chicken on the ground. Damn it, what kind of array is this? Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded. How do I break it? After looking for a while, Xiao Hua still didn't have any clue. However, his heart was moved again. His figure began to fly, flying in the direction of the golden and green brilliance. After waiting for an hour, the corners of Xiao Hua's mouth revealed a smile. He secretly said in his heart, as expected, when Xiao Hua was about to go to the side to take a look, Zhai Xingzi's voice transmitted to his ear, "What did Reverend see? If you didn't find anything, please turn back. Gongshu Yisin already knows how to break it." Oh, this little girl is really powerful. Xiao Hua agreed, secretly thinking in his heart. When Xiao Hua flew back, Sun Kong Shangren and the others were already standing around Gongshu Yisin, clustered around her like stars surrounding the moon. Chapter 37:13. Gongshu Exian's face was a little red, and her sparkling eyes showed a kind of excitement. Apparently, she had found her favorite thing. Gongshu Exian saw Xiao Hua fly back and asked with a smile, "Senior Xiao, what did you find?" Gongshu Exian's words didn't have any malice, but it was absolutely harsh in the ears of others. Xiaohua looked at this proud girl and knew that she was loved by all. He wouldn't lower himself to her level. He smiled and replied, "I didn't see anything. Even if I did, it's just some stupid opinions. Why don't I listen to Miss Gongshu's opinion first? Then what about Senior Sun Kong?" Gongshu Exian's lips curled up slightly, but it was a smug smile that wasn't easily noticed by others. She looked away from Xiaohua and turned to ask Sun Kong Shangren. The corner of Sun Kong Shangren's right eye twitched slightly. Apparently, he was a little unhappy. If it was an ordinary disciple, Sun Kong Shangren would have already taught him a lesson. However, although Gongshu Exian was a little arrogant, she came to help after all. Zhai Xingzi was standing next to her. Even if Sun Kong Shangren was angry, he couldn't vent it on this Confucian junior. Sun Kong Shangren glared fiercely at Zhai Xingzi, who was standing next to Gongshu Exian with an obsequious smile. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Little girl, this old man is not proficient in the art of formations. I just happened to obtain an ancient jade slip 1,000 years ago, which roughly explained the mysteries of formations. Unfortunately, even so, I can't understand it with my talent. As for why I stepped forward to explore this Jade Mountain formation, it was because of my beast pet." Sun Kong Shangren proudly patted the spirit monkey Changgung next to him. "My Changgung was born with the ability to see through the void. He can see through many formations. You." Gongshu Exian blushed. She really couldn't compare to Sun Kong Shangren in terms of cunning. Even if she wanted to refute, she couldn't, because as soon as she opened her mouth, she would be on the same level as Sun Kong Shangren's Changgung. However, Gongshu Exian wasn't going to give up easily. She rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "Elder Sun Kong, Junior seems to have heard that there is a Tai-Bai jinxing immortal official called Changgung in the Immortal Palace. How come your demon pet has the same name as him? If he knew about this, he would definitely fly into a rage, right?" Ha ha ha. Unexpectedly, Sun Kong Shangren was simply a troublemaker. He was not afraid at all. He stroked Changgung's small head and laughed loudly. "Changgung, Changgung, when did you go to the Immortal Palace to be a high official? Why didn't I know about it?" In a flash, Gongshu Exian understood that Sun Kong Shangren deliberately named his demon pet Changgung in order to humiliate the Confucian immortal cultivator in the Immortal Palace. It would be fine if Tai-Bai jinxing didn't know, but if he told Tai-Bai jinxing, what would Tai-Bai jinxing do? Perhaps at that time, Tai-Bai jinxing would not be angry at Master Sun Kong, but himself. Gongshu Exian was not stupid, but she had seen through a lot of the ways of the world. Once she understood, she fell into an awkward situation again. Fortunately, Gusu Chiodi hurriedly said with a smile, "Fellow immortal Sun Kong, quickly tell us what you found." "It wasn't me who found it. It was my Changgung who found it." Exalted Master Sun Kong had a smile on his face as he emphasized again. Then, he pointed at the spot that Changgung had been looking at and said, "Xue Ping and company's guesses are basically correct. However, they don't understand array formations after all. They're only following the picture and can only see the surface and one-sided. According to Changgung's observation, there are two formations fused together. One of them should be the famous 9 Dragon Bone battle. Take a look. The ridges on this mountain are made up of 9 dragon souls. Senior Tsang Longzi condensed them into chains to seal the entire formation. If we can't break the 9 Dragon Bone battle, we won't be able to reveal the cave." "What else?" Gongshu Exian asked with a smile, as if she had a card up her sleeve. Sun Kong Shangren looked at the smile and immediately understood the meaning behind it. However, since he had already said it and used Changgung's name, he was not afraid of making a fool of himself. Then he pointed at the Long River and said, "This Long River is similar to Xue Ping's observation. It's also a formation. If I'm not wrong, it should be the 9 demon subduing formation. However, this formation is a hidden one, which should complement the 9 Dragon Bone battle formation. One is bright and one is dark. One is yin and one is yang. If we want to show Senior Tsang Longzi's cave residence, we have to break the 2 formations at the same time. If we break one first, the the other formations will counterattack. Of course, if we can't break any of the formations, the yin and yang formations will counterattack together, which will be more powerful. Presumably, the vision recorded in the jade eyes is that we can't break the formations at the same time and cause the formation to counterattack. Clap, clap. Before Zhang Daoran and the others could speak, Gongshu Exen clapped her hands and said, "Senior Sun Kong is indeed amazing. You really saw through this formation." Hee hee, little girl. Hearing Gongshu Exen's praise, Sun Kong Shangren didn't look happy at all. He said faintly, "You should say that, but first." As expected, Gongshu Exen continued, "But you only saw through 30 to 40% of the formation. If you break the formation, I'm afraid we won't have any chance to enter." 30 to 40%? Not to mention Sun Kong Shangren. Even Zhai Xingzi and the others were shocked. If what Gongshu Exen said was true, the 9 Dragon Bone Lock formation and the 9 Yin Demon Subduing formation were only 30 to 40%. Then didn't that mean there were still 2 or 3 other formations? They had never heard of a formation that could combine 4 great formations into one. Gusachioti was also surprised. Exen, are you sure you saw it correctly? Hee hee, Sister Chiao, my Gongshu family's silver moon eyes are not inferior to the Immortal Palace's golden eyes. If I can't see it, who can? Gongshu Exen replied proudly. That's true. Gusu Chioti nodded. Sister's clear eyes technique didn't seem to be able to see anything. But Gongshu Exen raised her voice. Seniors, before I break the formation, I want to make it clear that when Sister Chiao invited me, I didn't ask for anything. It's not that I don't have any requests. I just want to see if I can break the formation. Now that I'm sure I can break the formation, I'll first discuss the conditions with you seniors. Zhang Daoran nodded. Lady Gongshu, please state your conditions. As long as they are reasonable, we'll agree. I have 2 conditions. Gongshu Exen replied confidently. First, I have a right to choose first from the items in Senior Tsang Longzi's cave residence. No. Sun Kong Shangren sneered. Senior Tsang Longzi is a Taoist senior. The items inside are all Taoist treasures. You're a Confucian disciple. What do you want them for? Yes, Sun Kong Shangren's opinion is also our opinion. Xiao Hua nodded. Since Xiao Hua had spoken, Zhai Xingzi also smiled and said, Miss Gongshu, this old man knows that you don't care about the difference between Confucianism and Taoism, so this old man won't hide it from you. One of the reasons why we entered Senior Tsang Longzi's Immortal's Cave was to obtain his orthodoxy. Yes, I understand. Gongshu Exen interrupted Zhai Xingzi impolitely, but it was this interruption that revealed her determination to enter the cave residence. Gongshu Exen said, in that case, I could take a step back. Except for the Taoist cultivation method Jade Slips, I want the right to choose first. How about this? Xiao Hua said, you can choose first from the formation items. As for the other items, you don't have to take first. Fine. Although Gongshu Exen was arrogant, she was also straightforward. She nodded. Then I'll talk about the second condition. How many conditions do you have? Zhang Daoran frowned and asked. Just these 2. Good, please. Zhang Daoran saw Xiao Hua's calmness and was relieved. The second condition is, in addition to the cultivation method, I want 50% of the treasures, medicinal pills, formations, and other items. Gongshu Exen's bright eyes curved into crescents. She knew her conditions were harsh, but Zhang Daoran and the others had to agree. Sure enough, Zhang Daoran heard this and felt bitter. The reason was obvious. Without Gongshu Exen, they couldn't break the formation and enter the cave residence. But even if he allowed Gongshu Exen to break the formation, with her cultivation level, she wouldn't be able to do it. The ones doing the work would still be the Taoist cultivators themselves. They put in a lot of effort, but a bossy Confucian cultivator took half of it. Zhang Daoran couldn't accept it. Zhang Daoran didn't want to agree, but other than Gongshu Exen, who could break the formation? No. Exalted Master Sun Kong immediately spoke and pointed at Xue Ping and the others. Senior Tsang Longzi's cave abode was discovered by these Tao sect disciples, so they should have 20% of the items inside. We should take 60% while the remaining 20% belongs to you. Hee hee. Then I'll have to ask all of you seniors to break the formation yourselves. I still want to live to see the sun rise tomorrow. Gongshu Exin didn't have any intention of bargaining and said with a smile. How about this? Gusu Chiodi naturally stepped forward and said with a smile. Exin, I don't want my share. You take 30%. After all, Senior Daoran and Daoist Xiao are the main force. Without them, even if you know the method, you can't break the formation, right? Says who? Gongshu Exin retorted. My Gongshu clan has no lack of 4th or 5th level cultivators. As long as there's an ancient maze formation here, it's easy to call a few over. Chapter 37:14. Xiao Hua heard Gongshu Exin's tone and felt a bit better. He didn't know if he cared about Gusu Chiodi's face or if he met his own expectations. He thought for a bit and said, Miss Gongshu, if you want to invite Gongshu family cultivators, I think you should invite some 6th level essence energy cultivators. If those 5th level, upper level Confucian cultivators come, even if they suppress the 2 outer formations, they won't be able to stop the inner formation's attack. They won't be able to see tomorrow's sun. Gongshu Exin's expression changed. She almost shouted in disbelief, You! How did you know? It doesn't matter how I know. What I care about is, Xiao Hua said faintly. If you don't agree to this 30%, we'll have to break the formation ourselves. At that time, you won't even get 30%. If I can't get it, then I can't. Gongshu Exin snorted. You just saw through the flaws. I don't believe you can. Gusu Chiodi quickly laughed. Exin is joking. Since you can see through the flaws, isn't it just right to help Exin break the formation? Everyone can study the formation together. Isn't that better? Exin, tell me what you found out. Elder Xiao first. Gongshu Exin thought for a bit and nodded, but she still looked at Xiao Hua angrily. Xiao Hua smiled and stretched out his hand. Shrugging his shoulders, he said, This old man didn't say that he saw any flaws. This is what the young lady said. I was just guessing. You. Gongshu Exin was so angry, she almost vomited blood. She said everything herself. Xiao Hua didn't say how she knew there was an origin formation inside. I don't believe you. You didn't see it. How do you know there's an origin formation inside? At this time, Gongshu Exin was no different from a little girl who was vindictive. She completely exposed the purity of her cultivation. Xiao Hua said, What's so hard about that? Song Longzi was a tribulation senior. This formation had been attacked by Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, and demon cultivators, but it had not been broken. Obviously, Song Longzi was a master of formations. It would not be strange if the defensive formation he had set up had 3 or 4 layers, let alone 2. Even if there are origin formations, Buddhist formations, and demonic formations inside, this old man wouldn't be surprised. This old man only said that there's an origin array inside. What's there to be surprised about? You. Gongshu Exin was completely speechless. Xiao Hua's words were really not wrong. He didn't need any special silver moon eyes. He could guess it just by thinking about it. Of course, there was an essential difference between seeing and guessing. The problem was that she had mixed up what she saw with what Xiao Hua had guessed. She thought that Xiao Hua had also discovered it, which was why she had given in. You stinky men only know how to bully us weak women. Gusu Chiodi smiled and pulled Gongshu Exin's arm. Don't lower yourself to the same level as these men. Quick! Show them what you found and let them know the power of us women. Also teach them what it means to be a woman who is not inferior to a man. Gusu Chiodi's words were obviously biased toward an outsider. Gongshu Exin was straightforward but not an idiot. Of course she could hear it. But she also knew that this was a way out and she should take advantage of it. Thinking for a moment, Gongshu Exin fiercely glared at old Senior Xiao and pointed with her finger. It's exactly as old Senior Xiao guessed. This guest was very heavy. Moreover, Xiao Hua's face that was stared at by the Gongshu family's Silver Moon Eye's secret technique twitched slightly as if he was stung by a wasp. Speaking of formations, Gongshu Xin seemed to have changed into a different person. She was no longer arrogant, willful, or haggling. Instead, her face was full of excitement, as if she would be happy even if you didn't give her a single primordial stone. She pointed with her finger and said, "This formation is divided into 2 layers, as old senior Xiao guessed. The outer layers are 2 Taoist formations. However, they are not the 9 Dragons Bone Lock formation and the 9 Yin Exorcism formation, but the Xianqing Spirit Forbidding formation and the Blue Sky Spring formation. The 2 formations that old senior Sun Kong mentioned are similar to the 2 formations that I mentioned, but there are essential differences. The 9 Dragons Bone Lock formation is a defensive formation, while the 9 Yin Exorcism formation is a suppressing formation. Old senior Song Longzi wouldn't place the 9 Yin Exorcism formation outside his cave residence to suppress himself, right?" Sun Kong blinked his eyes and didn't say anything. The Xianqing Spirit Forbidding formation and the Blue Sky Spring formation are different. They are both offensive formations. People often say that the strongest defense is offense. Old senior Song Longzi must know this very well. Of course, one of these 2 formations is in the light and the other is in the dark. It's just as old senior Sun Kong said. Gongshu Yisin continued. However, the difference between the Xianqing Spirit Forbidding formation and the 9 Dragons Bone Lock formation is that the Spirit Forbidding formation doesn't have a dragon vein inside. Instead, it imprisons a formation spirit. With this formation spirit, the entire formation isn't static. It's constantly changing, making it unpredictable and impossible to break. The most amazing thing is that the Emerald Spring formation is a concealment formation. The Emerald Spring formation is the softest of Yin, is also invisible and ever-changing. I can't be sure if there is a formation spirit in the Emerald Spring formation, but even if there is only one formation spirit, the 2 formations complemented each other and were equivalent to 3 independent formations. Formation spirit. Xiao Hua frowned. What's that? Is it a formation spirit? No. Gongshu Yisin shook her head. Formation spirit, that's just a legend. Not to mention, this one doesn't know about it. Even my Gongshu family and even the Confucian inheritance have never had this kind of formation spirit. The formation spirit I'm talking about is the demon spirit, living soul, or beast soul imprisoned inside the formation. These formation spirits can not only increase the flexibility of the formation, but the more powerful the formation spirit is, the more powerful the formation will be. Oh, I see. Xiao Hua understood. Then what's the origin formation I'm talking about? Gongshu Yisin rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua and said, in addition to the 2 Taoist formations outside the Misty Mountain Maze formation, there are 2 more formations inside. What? Zhai Xingzi was shocked. 2 origin formations? No, one is an origin formation, and the other is a Buddhist formation. Gongshu Yisin shook her head. However, my silver moon eyes are not strong enough. I can only see the origin formation and the Buddhist formation from the flaws of the 2 Taoist formations. I can't tell what kind of formations they are for now. Only after we break the 2 Taoist formations can I begin to break these 2 formations. But seniors don't worry about the origin formation. Senior Cang Longzi is a Taoist senior after all. This one has some confidence in breaking his origin formation. Girl, didn't you say just now? If we don't break the 2 formations inside at the same time, when we break the 2 outer formations, will we be attacked by the 2 inner formations? Sun Kong Shangren frowned and asked, why do we have to wait until the end? Gongshu Yisin nodded. If the inner formation is a Taoist formation, this one can't do anything about it. But since it's a Confucian origin formation, this one has confidence that it won't be activated. Xiao Hua nodded. What he saw was similar to what Gongshu Yisin saw, but he saw it more clearly. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua looked at Sun Kong Shangren and said a few words through voice transmission. Sun Kong Shangren frowned and looked at Xiao Hua with surprise. He waved his hand, and Chong Gung flew out to a place in the formation. At this time, Gongshu Yisin frowned and said, but Song Longzi's Misty Mountain Maze formation is very strange. This one has a question. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I still can't figure it out. Since we're going to break the formation together, this one will be frank with you seniors. Oh, what's so strange about it? Zhang Daoren asked. As the saying goes, flowing water doesn't rot, and the pivot doesn't rust. The ordinary blue sky spring formation uses the cold living spring of the 9 underworlds, but the spring water of this misty mountain maze formation is obviously not the 9 underworlds in water, so the formation's power is reduced a lot. Also, if it weren't for the jade eyes of the seniors who knew about the Misty Mountains maze formation, I wouldn't have been able to see through it with my clear eyes technique. This Misty Mountain maze formation conceals its magic power and noble spirit very well. There's not a trace of it outside the surface. What's so strange about it? Zhai Xingzi asked curiously. Of course it's strange. Gongshu Yisin smiled. We Confucian cultivators need to absorb noble spirit into our bodies. You seniors also need to absorb heaven and earth yuan qi to refine your bodies, right? It's the same for origin formations and magic formations. Without noble spirit and heaven and earth yuan qi, these magic formations and origin formations can't last long. Not to mention this Misty Mountain maze formation is from ancient times. What do you mean? Xiao Hua's heart also moved as he thought of a possibility. From what this one knows, this Misty Mountain maze formation must have an inner layer. This inner layer can absorb heaven and earth yuan qi and noble spirit. Gongshu Yisin nodded. Especially, Senior Cang Longzi handled this inner layer very well. Even if there are fluctuations of magic power and noble spirit, it won't be noticed by others. How is that possible? Zhai Xingzi shook his head. As long as there are fluctuations, it will be noticed by others. Fellow Zhai Xingzi. Xiao Hua was now somewhat convinced by Gongshu Yisin. Didn't Miss Gongshu just say? Flowing water doesn't rot. The pivot doesn't rust. When will the fluctuations and noble spirit not be noticed? Naturally, it's when heaven and earth yuan qi or noble spirit flows. Zhai Xingzi's eyes brightened, as if he had thought of something. That's right. Just when everyone was shocked, Gongshu Yisin said proudly, Senior Cang Longzi is your Taoist sex formation master. How can his cave be discovered so easily? The array formation of the old man's cave abode? Or rather, the old man's cave abode should be mobile under the activation of the array formation. It's not fixed in one place. Chapter 37:15. That's right. Hearing this, Zhai Xingzi slapped his thigh and exclaimed, That's right. That Cloudy Mountain maze formation should be at Yongzhou's Cloudy Mountain. How could it run to Jingzhou? Xue Ping and the others were thoroughly convinced. They had never understood why the Cloudy Mountain maze formation would be in Jingzhou. Moreover, so many Taoist and Confucian cultivators were searching for it. How could it be found by small cultivators like them? So the maze formation could move. Gongshu Yisin's words immediately revealed the answer to this mystery. Actually, Senior Cang Longzi's cave abode probably wasn't called Cloudy Mountain Maze Formation before. It was probably discovered when it first appeared in Yongzhou's Cloudy Mountain. So, it was named after it. Gongshu Yisin looked puzzled. What I'm puzzled about is that based on the current situation, Senior Cang Longzi's cave abode doesn't show any signs of moving. This situation has been going on for at least 10 years. Otherwise, with Xue Ping and the others' cultivation, it's very unlikely that they discover this cave abode. Xiao Hua nodded. Gongshu Yisin's puzzlement perfectly explained why Xue Ping was so lucky to discover this Cloudy Mountain maze formation. He probed. Brother Daoran said earlier that time is the best method to crack all great formations. Perhaps it's because the array outside Senior Cang Longzi's abode is too old, and it's hard for the array to not be damaged as it moves. Today, the array can no longer support itself, so it stopped here. What Senior Xiao said is the most likely possibility. Gongshu Yisin nodded. I can't see the situation inside the cave abode, so I can only guess. Let's not worry about this for now. Zhang Daoren smiled. Miss, since you've analyzed the formation so clearly, do you have a way to crack it? That's right. Master Sun Kong also asked, this great formation was baptized by many experts in the past, but none of them could break it. How confident are we? 60%. Gong Shui Sin smiled very confidently. Girl, you're bragging. Master Sun Kong laughed. 60% is basically enough to crack it. Senior Sun Kong. Gong Shui Sin smiled. What is recorded in the Jade Eye is the situation when Senior Tsang Longzi was meditating in the cave. At that time, the formation was controlled by Senior Tsang Longzi. It is very different from the current one. In terms of power alone, it would be reduced by at least 40%. Didn't old Senior Xiao mention it just now? Time is the best method to break a formation. This cave abode can't even move, and the Jade Fall Spring formation has been replaced. Even the surface of the formation has a flaw. From what I know, its power has been reduced by another 30%. In other words, 30% of the initial power of the Misty Mountain Maze formation should not be a problem for all of you seniors who are at the upper tier of the 4th grade and under my command. GG. At this moment, the spirit monkey Changgung in the distance let out a strange hiss. Sun Kong Shangren raised his eyebrows. He looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Gong Shu Exien and said with a smile, I'm afraid this old man's beast pet has discovered something. Gong Shu girl, come with this old man and the others to take a look. Deference is no substitute for obedience. Gong Shu Exien also felt strange and nodded. At this moment, the spirit monkey Changgung was abnormally happy. It stood at the place where Xiao Hua was previously standing and kept somersaulting. Its small mouth squeaked and its tongue kept sticking out of its mouth as if it was making a face. But when Sun Kong Shangren flew closer, Changgung suddenly flew into Sun Kong Shangren's hand. It lifted up the sleeve of its Taoist robe and hid its head inside, only revealing its red butt. Ha! Gong Shui Exien laughed loudly. Gusu Qiu Di also covered her mouth, her face slightly red. You're a killer, Sun Kong Shangren said with a smile. I just gave you credit and you dropped the ball. You really can't show off. Xiao Hua frowned and asked, Brother Sun Kong, Changgung seems a bit abnormal. It seems to be excited and scared. Is there a problem with the formation here? And it should be. Sun Kong Shangren's face became serious. He nodded and said, This formation looks like the formation spirit that Gong Shu girl said. And it's not just one type. There are some that Changgung can devour and some that Changgung is scared of. The profound pure spirit restriction is now a bit damaged. I'm afraid the evil spirits inside are leaking out. Gong Shu Exien flew to where Changgung was and explained, it's also possible that there's only one type of formation spirit. But the formation's leakage is not very uniform. The evil spirits are sometimes strong and sometimes weak, causing Changgung to misunderstand. Maybe it's not that simple. Xiao Hua had a bad feeling in his heart. Then, what is Elder Zhao's opinion? Gong Shu Exien said with a smile. Weren't you just explaining formation Dao to your disciple? From what I've heard, it's quite standard and methodical. It seems that you also understand the Dao of array formations. Xiao Hua shook his head. This old man knows a bit, but I haven't truly comprehended it. I don't have the experience of learning from the most basic foundation like you. Facing a great formation like the Misty Mountain Maze formation, this old man can't trace it back to its source. This old man can only break formation with formation. That's brute force. Gong Shui Exen was already standing in the air, criticizing Xiao Hua without holding back. To put it bluntly, it's ruthlessly destroying a flower. This kind of formation breaking method is effective, but if you can't completely break the formation, then you'll have to face the formation's full counterattack. This method isn't very suitable for the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Then, Gong Shu Exian's 7 apertures began to glow with a faint silver light. This light condensed into her eyes. In just a moment, her eyes flashed with a silver-white halo. This halo was like a full moon, falling towards the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Sun Kong Shangren and the others had already flown over and surrounded Gong Shu Exian. Zhaixing Zi and Zhang Daoran even channeled their Dharma powers and released their divine sense. They slowly scanned the surroundings, wary of any changes in the formation. Fortunately, after the time it took to eat a meal, Gongshu Exin withdrew the eye-clearing technique. The Great Formation didn't have any special changes, and Gongshu Exin's face carried a deep smile again. Senior Sun Kong. Gongshu Exin glanced at Chang Gung, who had been put into Sun Kong's robe, and said, Your demon pet is really powerful. This one just used the eye-clearing technique to look. This is the most damaged part of the Great Formation. From here, you can see the situation of the Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation. Chang Gung deserves the first merit of this trip. That's good. Sun Kong intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Xiao Hua and answered with a smile. In that case, Miss Gongshu, can you give half of the benefits to my Chang Gung? Gongshu Exin smiled. Her eyes curved like a little fox. It's not too late to wait until Senior's demon pet learns how to break the formation. All right. Sun Kong shrugged. This old man will wait until I get the formation jade slip from Senior Tsang Longzi's cave, and then give it to Chang Gung. Zhang Daoran whispered. Miss Gongshu, this Cloud Mountain Maze Formation's Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation's Origin Formation. How is it? Gongshu Exin withdrew her smile, and her face became solemn. She nodded and said, Senior Tsang Longzi is really amazing. In addition to the 2 Dao formation mentioned before, which are the few powerful formations I've seen in my life, this Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation are also the great formations that my Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect have lost. Oh, if it's a lost, great formation, how can misunderstand it? Xiao Hua frowned and asked curiously, did Senior Xiao forget? This one is a descendant of the Gongshu family. Senior Xiao should know what my Gongshu family is good at, right? Gongshu Exin called him Senior Xiao very straightforwardly. Of course, Xiao Hua was also happy to hear it. Senior Xiao touched his nose and said with a smile, This old man naturally knows. But this old man thinks these are great formations from millions or even tens of millions of years ago. Gongshu family might not be able to preserve them completely. Xiao Hua had read all the Confucian classics of the hidden immortal continent. Now, he was not comparable to when Fu Jiwen met him. However, he still only knew that the Gongshu family was extremely mysterious. They had a deep accumulation of mechanisms and origin formations. They might not be worse than the Mo family. However, the Gongshu family's reputation on the hidden immortal continent was far inferior to the Mo family. Of course, Xiao Hua wouldn't say this in front of Gongshu Exin. He only vaguely asked Gongshu Exin, How could Gongshu Exin not hear Xiao Hua's obscure words? She snorted and said, Since the Mo family can preserve the ancient puppet refining method, why can't my Gongshu family preserve the ancient origin formation Dao? This one can reveal that the origin formation that Senior Tsang Longzi used to protect the cave is one of the best preserved ancient origin formations of my Gongshu family. 1. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, So there's a second and third one. I don't know. Gongshu Exin raised the corner of her mouth and didn't answer. She just pointed and said, This one only knows that this origin formation's name is Golden Wind and Jade Dew. AI, delicate clouds play tricks, flying stars spread hatred. The silver river passes in secret. Golden wind and jade do meet. It surpasses countless things in the human world. Tender as water, auspicious days like a dream, enduring the magpie bridge to return home. If two people's feelings last long, why would they be together day and night? Hearing the name of the origin formation, Gusu Chiodi couldn't help but sigh and recite. When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He then said embarrassedly, The Confucian origin formation is really strange. This name is too lingering. What do you vulgar Taoist sect people know? Gongshu Exin said with disdain. Although Taoist sect formations are powerful, their names are unpleasant to hear. What 9 dragon bone lock? What mysterious soul shattering? how can they compare to my Confucian origin formation? The golden wind and jade, dew great formation, is the lingering feeling of love and longing like a tide. Once one falls into the origin formation, they will wish for death, unable to beg for life. Forget it, forget it. Sun Kong waved his hand. This old man doesn't know anything about golden wind and jade dew. I only know that an old man is pushing a cart. Miss, why don't you tell me how to break this origin formation and what that Buddhist formation is? Chapter 37:16. Bah! Gongshu Exan spat, her face slightly red, and then said seriously, the other Buddhist formation has also been lost, but fortunately, this one coincidentally found a fragment of a map on a small hill when I was traveling in Nirvana. It was precisely this brilliant glazed golden light Buddhist formation. So this one has a 60% chance of breaking the origin formation and Buddhist formation inside. Brilliant glazed golden light Buddhist formation? Xiao Hua slightly furrowed his brows. One of the Buddhist scriptures of the exquisite temple, Great Treasure Accumulation Sutra, immeasurable life, Tathagata, society, secretly flowed through his mind. He didn't quite understand the relationship between the Buddhist formation he saw earlier and this Buddhist scripture. What? Senior Xiao also knows Buddhism? Gongshu Exin was still keenly aware of Xiao Hua's strangeness and asked with a smile. It's about the same as this one's formation cultivation, Xiao Hua said ambiguously. Senior Xiao is really amazing. You know a lot of things. Gongshu Exin's words were more sarcastic than admiring. Xiao Hua heard this and smiled bitterly, glancing at Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi also smiled bitterly. Since Gongshu Exin came here, she gave Xiao Hua a hard time, obviously because of Gusu Qiudi. Seeing this, Gusu Qiudi hurriedly changed the topic and urged, Sister Exan, since you have already seen through the Misty Mountain Maze formation, do you want to start breaking the formation? Sister Chio, wait a moment. Gongshu Exin replied. Being able to see through a formation is different from being able to break one. The old monks of the Buddhist sect can see through these maze formations. But if you let them break the formation, I'm afraid even their bones won't be left. This little sister wants to see the big formations trend first and speculate the big formations changes. Then, Gongshu Exin clapped her hand, took out a chinquan bag, took out a palm-sized formation plate, opened her mouth, and a stream of true chi fell on it. The formation plate produced clouds, and waves of inscriptions flowed out, covering the whole formation plate. Then, Gongshu Exin waved her hand, and the formation plate fell into the formation. Several rays of light appeared and wrapped around the formation plate. After a while, the formation plate disappeared. Next, Gongshu Exin didn't stop. She placed a total of 81 formation discs within 100 miles of the formation. When the last formation disc was placed inside the formation, Gongshu Exin's body trembled slightly. A powerless paleness appeared on her pale face. Gusu Chiodi had been by Gongshu Exin's side. She hurriedly supported Gongshu Exin and asked with concern, Are you all right? I'm fine, big sister Chio. Gongshu Exin's eyes were filled with fatigue as she whispered, I'll be fine after resting for a while. Then, Gongshu Exin glanced at Xiao Hua and the others not far away and said indifferently, If little sister doesn't show some real ability, how can they give little sister 30% of the benefits? Then, Gongshu Exin reached out and took out a jade bottle. She crushed the bottle, and a few drops of fragrant liquid fell in her mouth. As the liquid entered her mouth, Gongshu Exin's face slowly turned red. Seeing Gongshu Exin casually throw away the jade bottle, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. He waved his hand, and the jade bottle flew into his hand. Elder Xiao, what are you doing? Gongshu Exin raised her hand as if to stop him, but she was still weak. She knew she couldn't compete with Xiao Hua's spiritual power, so she asked indifferently. Xiao Hua didn't answer her. He took the jade bottle and sniffed it. He nodded slightly. Candlecore grass, Hongyang fruit? Lady Gongshu, this liquid doesn't seem to be an ordinary spirit medicine for strengthening the spirit. Gongshu Exion's face didn't have any expression. Instead, she showed a trace of coldness and said indifferently, Taoist cultivators are indeed vulgar. Even the liquid I took is my secret. Elder Xiao, don't you know how to respect other people's secrets? Fine. Xiao Hua originally wanted to ask a few more questions. He might be able to help Gongshu Exian refine some suitable medicinal pills. But Gongshu Exian clearly had the attitude of keeping people at a distance. Xiao Hua didn't need to ask for a rebuff. Then, Gongshu Exian flew above the formation and told everyone, including Gusu Qiudi, to stay far away from her. She sat cross-legged on the high ground and made strange hand seals. As she waved her fingers, streams of noble qi came out of the void. Gongshu Exian opened her mouth and spat out a few mouthfuls of pure qi. The noble qi turned into inscriptions and landed on the 81 spots of the Great Formation. Wong wong wong. As if someone was playing a zither, a pleasant sound came from all over the place. Gorgeous scrolls flew out from various parts of the misty mountain maze and unfurled high up in the sky. Gongshu Exian's eyes shined with the color of the silver moon. Her face was serious. This scene lasted for a full day and night. When the moon fell and the stars became sparse, all the scrolls gradually disappeared in the cold dew. Okay, elders. Gongshu Exian's voice was a bit hoarse. I've seen through the misty mountain formation. There's no time to lose. Everyone listen to me. Sister Exian, Gusu Chio D hurriedly shouted. You've used up a lot of essence. Why don't you rest for a while? No need. Gongshu Exian smiled. I'm just sending people. I'm not doing it myself. I don't need to rest. Okay, you know what you're doing. Gusu Chio D nodded, but there was still some worry in her eyes. Elders, you must have prepared a lot to break the formation. Gongshu Exian looked at Zhang Daoran and asked. Zhang Daoran nodded. Indeed, but Gongshu Exian didn't wait for Zhang Daoran to finish and interrupted. You don't need to tell me what you've prepared. I'm only responsible for sending people to break the formation. If you're not prepared enough, don't blame me. Then Gongshu Exian asked, Elder Sun Kong, take your beast pet to the east. When the sun rises, there will be yang qi rising from the east to the formation. You can use a fire-type magic treasure to suppress it. If the formation spirit's qi leaks out, you can let your beast pet devour it. Yes. Master Sun Kong nodded and clapped his hand. It really was a palm-sized stone strip. The stone strip was engraved with countless flame-shaped runes, and the entire stone strip emitted a scarlet red light. This old man's scarlet flamestone can be used. Finished speaking, Venerable Master Sun Kong transformed into a rainbow and headed east. Elder Zhang Daoran. Gongshu Exian looked at Zhang Daoran again and ordered, if you don't have a beast pet, you can take out a cold-type magic treasure and go to the west of the formation. When the sun rises, there will be yin qi rushing out from the west. You don't need to pay attention to it. When Elder Sun Kong takes out his magic treasure and disturbs the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation, the blue sky underworld formation will be affected. The yin qi will turn back. When the yin qi hasn't completely soaked into the spring water, you can use your magic treasure to lock the yin qi in one fell swoop. As the saying goes, to beat a snake, you have to hit its weak point. This is the formation's weak point. Good. Zhang Daoran's face lit up. I already have a cold-type magic treasure. I've just refined it. It's perfect for today. Elder, please. Gongshu Exian smiled and raised her hand. Then she looked at Xiao Hua and asked, Elder Xiao, do you have the fire type? Xiao Hua shook his head. I have the metal type, but I know fire-type spells. Oh, Elder, you actually have the rare metal type. How rare. But compared to Elder Zhai Xing, your strength is still a bit shallow. Elder Xiao and Elder Sun Kong suppressed the Xianqing spirit, forbidding formation together. Gongshu Exian said and pointed at the North Pole, instructing Elder Dao Ran, when you seal the blue sky underworld formation, the yin qi will definitely trigger the response of the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation. If Elder Sun Kong is suppressing the dragon's head, Then the North Pole is the dragon's tail. As the saying goes, when a dragon swings its tail, mountains and rivers will shatter. It's even more powerful than when a dragon raises its head. I heard that Elder Zhao's cultivation is extremely profound, so I'll entrust this important task to Elder Zhao. When Elder Dao ram locks on the formation, the enchanting spirit forbidding formation will shake like a landslide. Elder Zhao, use your natal magic treasure to suppress it. If this natal magic treasure is of the fire type, it's best. If it's of the metal type, it's also fine. What about this? Xiaohua opened his mouth and the seal of the overturning sea flew out. Layers of yellow shadows floated on it. Earth-type magic treasure? Gongshu Exin was a bit dazed. She looked at Xiaohua up and down and asked curiously, Elder Xiao, what kind of element do you have? Of course it's of the metal type. Xiaohua said with a smile, but I have a lot of magic treasures. This seal of the overturning sea seems to be perfect for suppressing it. This magic treasure is quite powerful. Although its element isn't very suitable, it's not a big problem. Gongshu Exin nodded and then looked at Zhai Xingzi. Elder Zhai Xing, you have to guard the South Pole, which is the tail of the blue sky underworld formation. You're good at using the power of the stars. The power of the stars has always been violent, so it'll be twice the result with half the effort to deal with the power of ice. However, you don't have to wait for Elder Xiao to make his move. When Elder Dao Ran makes his move, you can make your move as well. Okay. Zhai Xingzi waved his hand and took the falling star in his hand. Then he followed Xiaohua and flew in the opposite direction. Seeing the four nascent soul cultivators standing in different places, Gongshu Exin shouted at Fu Jiwen and the others in the distance. Go and find suitable seniors according to the attributes of your body or magic treasures. If you need anything, they'll tell you. Yes. Fu Jiwen and the others answered in unison and flew in different directions. Besides Fu Jiwen and Xue Ping, there were two other cultivators by Xiaohua's side. Okay, Elder Sister Qiu, it's your turn now. Gongshu Exin said with a smile. Do you have ice water or an imperial artifact refined with ice water? This. Gusu Qiu Di shook her head slightly. Elder Sister doesn't have such a powerful imperial artifact. Then, does Elder Sister have a Buddhist artifact? Even less so. Oh, then it's a bit troublesome. Gongshu Exin frowned slightly. Chapter 37:17. Hearing this, Gusu Chiodi smiled bitterly. Starchild and the others prepared a lot of things, but who knew that Senior Tsang Longzi's cave has an essence formation and a Buddhist formation? They wouldn't have prepared imperial or Buddhist artifacts. Then, Sister Qiu asked them if they have frigid water. Gongshu Isin hesitated and said, if they don't, I'll have to think of another way. Gusu Chiodi hurriedly transmitted her voice, but obviously, no one had frigid water. Just as Gongshu Isin was about to think hard, she suddenly smiled and whispered, Sister Qiu, you're mistaken. Frigid water is what we call Confucian cultivators. Taoism calls it innate heavy water. Indeed. Gusu Chiodi also smiled and transmitted her voice again. But after a while, Gusu Chiodi's face showed a strange expression and said, they don't have innate heavy water either. But your Senior Xiao has innate primordial water. Is it useful? Of course. Gongshu Isin raised her eyebrows. Innate primordial water is more effective than innate heavy water. Saying this, Gongshu Isin took out an imperial artifact that looked like a copper cup and gave it to Gusu Chiodi. She then told Gusu Chiodi the inscriptions to activate the imperial artifact and urged her to get 3 drops of innate primordial water. When Gusu Chiodi returned, Gongshu Isin said, Sister Qiu, when the 4 nascent soul cultivators suppress the enchanting spirit forbidding formation and blue sky underworld formation, the golden wind jade dew essence formation and bright glazed golden light Buddha formation will explode at the same time. At this time, you and I must do our best to not let the noble chi of the essence formation and the Buddha light of the Buddha formation collide. Senior Tsang Longzi set up these 2 formations in the inner layer, which are completely different from the Taoist formations, so that when the immortals and Buddhas collide, the primal chi of the universe will be stimulated. When the power of the three formations collides, everything will be wiped out. Hiss! Gusuchiyori took in a cold breath and was a bit uncertain. She whispered, "We're only at the 5th level of essence chi. Can we break this ancient forbidden formation? Humans die for wealth. Birds die for food." Gongshu Xin didn't answer. She only said a few words. She raised her head and looked at the clouds in the east. She reached out and took out a strange imperial weapon. This imperial equipment was 3 inches long and looked like a small ladder. It also looked like a square fence and was engraved with densely packed armor inscriptions. When Gusuchiyori heard this, she felt helpless. Everyone knew how powerful this misty mountain maze formation was. However, for tens of thousands of years, didn't many cultivators try their best to find this formation? Now that they were already in front of the door, how could they stop? Gongshu Xin took a few deep breaths. Faint clouds surged around her body. Wisps of noble chi swarmed over. Gongshu Xin opened her mouth and breathed true chi into the imperial treasure. The imperial treasure gradually expanded. Little sister will go first. Gongshu Xin flew to the north and stopped about 10 miles away from Gusuchiyori. Gusuchiyori also flew towards the south, stopping after flying for a full 10 miles. She then raised her hand and activated her Zhen Qi. The copper cup glowed with a bronze radiance, and the 3 drops of Xiantian true water began to revolve slowly in the radiance like a bright full moon. Swoosh! Seeing that dawn had broken in the east, an ray of sunlight pierced the vault of heaven. Sun Kong had already released his divine sense to envelop an area of several dozen kilometers around him. Sure enough, under the sunlight, the side of the mountain that previously didn't have the slightest trace of magic power fluctuation suddenly soared up a blazing aura. This aura made a hissing sound in the air. This chi was different from normal Dharma power. It only had a yang chi like the rising of the sun and the setting of the moon. If Gongshu Xin didn't warn him, Sun Kong Shangren wouldn't have cared. Gee. The spirit monkey Chong Gung showed a fearful expression. It flipped in the air again, trying to dodge. Seeing this, Sun Kong Shangren didn't dare to be careless. He waved his hand, and the scarlet flame stone flew into the air. Under the golden sunlight, the scarlet flame stone emitted a strong flame. Go! As Sun Kong Shangren formed a seal, a wave of Dharma power rushed into the scarlet flame stone. Whoosh! The scarlet flame stone's flame instantly grew stronger. Hundreds of heaven and earth origin chi turned into a hurricane and rushed into the flame. Now is the time. Sun Kong Shangren narrowed his eyes. He watched the chi rush straight into the sky. It seemed to be attracted by the scarlet flame stone's chi and actually changed direction. Sun Kong Shangren's heart tightened, and he slapped the top of his head. Wong! A chi appeared out of nowhere. The chi condensed into a pillar and landed on the scarlet flame stone. Boom! Like fireworks, a large hand rushed out of the scarlet flame stone. It was completely formed by flames and instantly covered the surrounding several hundred feet. Roar! A hoarse roar came from the air. The chi that rushed out earlier seemed to sense something was wrong. It let out a roar and immediately fell. However, this chi only fell a few feet before Sun Kong Shangren's flaming hand fell and caught this chi in its hand. As for Chong Gung, who was next to Venerable Master Sun Kong, the hair on his body stood up, and his tail was as straight as a stick. His eyes shone brightly as he charged toward the hand, ready to take advantage of the situation. Rumble! Suddenly, the sound of thunder rang out above the oval-shaped formation. It was like a clap of thunder on a sunny day. The entire space began to tremble. Immediately afterwards, a powerful whirlwind appeared below Master Sun Kong. Sand and pebbles immediately flew up from the mountain. Just as the whirlwind appeared, Zhang Daren's body suddenly gave off a strange coldness. Then thousands of needle-like coldness appeared and surged toward Zhang Daoran. Zhang Daoren originally had an ice body, so he wasn't afraid of the cold. However, this coldness was clearly abnormal. Even with Zhang Daoren's ability, he couldn't help but shiver. He quickly raised his hand, and a strange magic treasure appeared in his hand. This magic treasure was dark green and seemed to be in the shape of a beast. However, its head was missing, and only 3 of its 4 hooves were intact. A green light flashed on Zhang Daoren's face, and the magic treasure suddenly expanded. The shadow of a monster emerged from the magic treasure, and the moment it appeared, it immediately blocked the cold. At this moment, waves of crashing sounds came from under Zhang Daoren. A dark purple aura that could be seen with the naked eye rushed out from the formation toward Zhang Daoren. The aura's power was extremely strong. Even someone as strong as Zhang Daoren was shocked. He involuntarily activated his magic power and had to first take out a magic treasure to block it. Just as the magic treasure glowed, Xiao Hua's voice came. "Brother Daoren, don't be impatient. See." Zhang Daoren took a deep breath and shivered. He quickly retreated. Gongshu Yisin had clearly said not to block the Yin aura when it first appeared. Although Gongshu Yisin didn't explain, the Yin aura was very clear. This Yin aura was the power of the formation. Zhang Daoren's cultivation couldn't block it. He should avoid it and wait for the Yin aura to return before attacking it. Who knew that Zhang Daoren actually lost his sense of propriety in the formation? If it wasn't that Zhang Daoren's Dao heart wasn't complete, then the formation had the power to bewitch him. Fortunately, Xiao Hua reminded him in time. Zhang Daoren suddenly realized. Sure enough, the extremely cold aura rushed into the sky. Layers of ice fell in the nearby space. When the Yin aura reached a height of 1,000 feet, it suddenly rolled down like a waterfall and fell straight back into the formation. Zhang Daoren didn't dare to be careless. He released his divine sense. A cold aura that seemed to be able to freeze divine sense spread toward Zhang Daoren's Naiwan palace. Zhang Daoren was shocked. He hurriedly urged his Yuanying. The Yuanying stretched out its hand, and a dark green object like a water droplet flew out from its body. It was the ghost gallbladder Zhang Daoren, just obtained from the Jade Pavilion gathering. The Yuanying opened its mouth and spat a mouthful of golden blood on it. Wong wong. The ghost gallbladder vibrated. A layer of ink-like liquid seeped into the Yuanying's hand. The Yuanying's hands formed a seal. A wave of extreme Yin aura came out of Zhang Daoren's body. Zhang Daoren hadn't completely refined this ghost gallbladder. When this aura came out, a layer of ice appeared around Zhang Daoren's body. However, this cold aura blocked the invasion of divine sense. Zhang Daoren was slightly absent-minded. The Yin aura had already fallen a lot. Zhang Daoren lamented the strangeness of this formation. He hurriedly slapped his hand. A pure green light flew out from the top of his head and landed on the magic treasure in midair. The magic treasure was like the finishing touch of a dragon, as it gave birth to a magnificent multicolored light. Although there wasn't any roar, it still bravely rushed toward the Yin aura. Kacha! A strange sound came from the formation. Then, gurgle, the sound of a fountain gushing out from the large formation within a radius of 100 miles. Rumble! Just as the strange sound appeared, a series of earth-shaking movements came from the entire formation again. In the far east, Master Sun Kong, together with the Red Flame Stone and Monkey Chong Gong, was lifted up to a height of 1,000 feet. Several Taoist disciples who were preparing to help at the side were also lifted up. They couldn't maintain their balance at all. Below them, hundreds of ridges swelled up and flew into the air. The gravel fell down like rain. At the same time, Zhang Daoren was also lifted up to a height of 1,000 feet. The river that shuttled through the formation also boiled. A destructive aura of yin and yang instantly filled the space of a few hundred miles. Woo-woo! As the heaven and earth rumbled, a powerful earthy yellow light beam rushed out from the North Pole where Xiao Hua was. Inside the light beam, the seal of overturning the sea, which was as big as a mountain, produced thousands of pearls. Under the urging of the coiling dragon, it produced a powerful, confining force that landed on a corner of the formation. Boom! The entire sky surged with a wave of air again. As the seal of overturning the sea fell, its suppressive force spread toward the far east along the ridges above the formation. The ridges that had already flown into the air were now twisting extremely, but they still slowly fell down. At the connection of these ridges, thousands of gaps were revealed. They were the traces of the enchanting spirit forbidding formation being damaged by the erosion of time. Chapter 37:18. As soon as Xiao Hua moved, Zhai Xingzi didn't dare to stay still. Seeing the hundreds of water lights and ice shards rushing towards him from all directions, Zhai Xingzi's body started to glow with starlight. His entire body gradually became blurry. Woo-woo! Similarly, the natural yuan qi descended from the sky like a hurricane and landed within the starlight. Immediately after, another ray of light flew out from Zhai Xingzi's hand. That falling star was activated by Zhai Xingzi. The several zhang long starlight soared into the sky and directly pierced into the water lights. It emitted a sizzling sound. Xiao Hua had already released a trace of his divine sense. He was constantly paying attention to Zhai Xingzi's movements. Although Zhai Xingzi's magic treasure released starlight, he was still activating the qi of heaven and earth. Xiao Hua wasn't disappointed. He knew that Zhai Xingzi was using the power of the stars. However, this power of the stars was condensed from a magic treasure. It couldn't be considered the real power of the stars. However, even if that was the case, Zhai Xingzi's skills were still powerful. Zhai Xingzi's body was like a bright star that shone rapidly and resonated with the falling star. A desolate qi came out from the falling star and pressed down on the formation along with the starlight. Rumble. Huge tremors appeared continuously and suppressed the space around Zhai Xingzi, who was thousands of feet away from him. Sun Kong Shangren, Zhang Daoran, Xiao Hua, and Zhai Xingzi were respectively at the east, west, north, and south of the Misty Mountain Maze. They used their divine powers to suppress the enchanting spirit forbidding formation and the blue sky underworld formation. It was as if four giant hands were pressing down on the four corners of the formation. Even if the formation spirit and the qi of yin and yang were stirring crazily, they still couldn't break free from this suppression. However, when the suppression above the four corners landed in the center of the formation like waves, puff puff, a sound like a fountain suddenly appeared. Right between Gusichioti and Gongshu Isin, a crack appeared in the formation. It was as if a huge eye was slowly opening. This eye was flowing with two colors. One was a clear green qi. Inside it, billions of inscriptions flowed like tadpoles. The other was a golden Buddhist light. Inside it, layers of golden inscriptions were like a Buddha or a heavenly dragon, stirring up thousands of Buddhist chants. As the huge cracks split open, the two colors began to rush madly towards each other. An indescribably terrifying aura was born along with the noble spirit in the void, as well as the power of thought that came out of nowhere. Hiss! Xiao Hua's divine sense sensed this, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. He secretly said, "Sure enough, it's a great array carefully arranged by a great array master." If the great array was in good condition, not to mention 4 late nascent soul stage cultivators, even 4 late spirit severing stage cultivators wouldn't dare to break the array. I really don't know what other tricks this Gongshu Isin has. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, he heard a clear sound coming from Gongshu Isin's location. It was like the cry of a phoenix or the cry of a bird. 3 colored qi rushed into the air and condensed into a Z. That somewhat graceful Z grabbed with its hand. Gongshu Isin's ladder-like imperial equipment fell into the air. Rumble, rumble. Countless ant-like inscriptions fell from the imperial equipment and fell into the formation called Golden Wind and Jade Dew. These inscriptions were very strange. As they fell, they expanded. Not only did they devour the inscriptions inside the formation, they also stole the noble qi from the void. Moreover, These inscriptions formed poems and articles, falling into the formation. As the number of poems increased, the formation was no longer able to drown them out. Every inscriptions that came into contact with these poems were assimilated, turning into words and sentences of the poems. What was special was that the poems and articles formed by these inscriptions condensed extremely quickly. The poems condensed into articles, and the articles condensed into scrolls. Hundreds, thousands of scrolls formed a mountain of literature, suppressing the golden wind and jade dew formation, not allowing the formation to disperse at all. What was special was that the scrolls under the mountain of literature fell one by one, forming a dragon-like book city, separating the inscriptions of the formation from the Buddhist light of the formation. While Gongshu Isin was controlling the imperial equipment to block the formation, Gusu Chiodi was not slow either. The imperial equipment that looked like a copper cup tilted slightly, and a stream of green water poured out of the cup, rushing into the Buddhist formation like the Milky Way. The golden inscriptions in the Buddhist formation gave off Buddhist light. This Buddhist light was crystal clear, and every inch of it had a glass Buddha hidden inside. However, when the green water fell and the Buddhist light pierced into it, there was no reflection or penetration. It was as if the light had disappeared. When the thousands of chants fell into the green water formed by the primordial water, they also disappeared into the countless small kiliocosms inside the primordial water. The book mountain expanded rapidly, blocking the light of the primordial formation like an iron wall. The blue water surged like a transparent barrier, blocking the light of the Buddha formation. For a moment, the crack actually stopped there, and the rumbling of the entire formation started to weaken. Incredible, incredible! Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua was astonished when he saw the great array begin to slow down. This great array could even block a 7th grade essence energy cultivator in the past, but now it has actually declined to this extent. Can a few 5th grade essence energy cultivators like us suppress it? No, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiao Hua saw that things were going so smoothly, far exceeding what was recorded in the Jade Eyes. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Xiao Hua did not know about other people's divine abilities, but he himself had thought about it for a long time. Some divine abilities that were not afraid of being seen through were supposed to be used here. But just one seal of turning sea suppressed the gate-guarding formation that was close to a tribulation-passing expert strength. Wasn't this too much of a tribulation-passing expert? Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua's doubts arose, it was like a wave rising and falling. Just now it was a wave trough, but now the formation's power suddenly rose, and a huge wave rushed up. Whether it was Xiao Hua and the other Dao cultivators or Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin, a huge force appeared under them at the same time, pouncing towards them. Wong Wong. The seal of turning sea roared loudly, and countless phantoms pounced on the formation one after another. Powerful ripples in the void were actually struck out by these phantoms. Although this seal of turning sea had not been completely refined by green-robed Xiao Hua, the aura of a spiritual weapon had already taken shape. All of you quickly retreat. Although the seal of overturning sea had suppressed a corner of the grand formation, Xiao Hua was alarmed and had a bad feeling. He hurriedly shouted at Fu Jiwen and the others, "Come back after this grand formation is broken." Yes, disciple understands. Fu Jiwen, Xue Ping, and the others did not dare to be negligent. They urged their figures to fly far away. Sun Kong and the others also saw the figures of the other disciples hurriedly escaping. This formation was indeed not something they could participate in with their cultivation. Moreover, Xiao Hua's eyes were sharp and his hand were fast. The power of his spiritual weapon was powerful, and it suppressed the north pole of the formation in an instant. Then, the cultivators of the other 3 poles of the formation would not be able to withstand it. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds, like the growls and roars of ferocious beasts, were heard. The counterattack of the formation pounced on Sun Kong. It was so powerful that it caused the faces of the three late nascent soul cultivators to change. Sun Kong and Xiao Hua worked together to suppress the profound purity spirit forbidding formation. His counterattack was the most powerful. The hundreds of mountain ridges seemed to have come alive at this moment. They broke free from the formation and crazily extended from Xiao Hua's location to Sun Kong. Taoist Master Xiao, you are testing me. Sun Kong bitterly smiled and slapped the top of his head with his hand. Poof! A 6-feet-long baby flew out with a snake-like whip in his hand. This baby was wearing exquisite spiritual armor. As soon as it appeared in midair, it immediately opened its mouth. Woo! A huge wind column was born in midair. Several spiraling flows of vital qi of heaven and earth descended from the sky, forming a huge hole and falling into the nascent soul's mouth. Wong wong! Wind flowers flashed around the nascent soul's body. The nascent soul's entire body seemed to be inflated with air. In a moment, it was 1,000 feet tall. Poof! Sun Kong's nascent soul dharma body had just formed. He pointed his finger, and the crimson flame rock that was originally floating in midair immediately turned into a ball of flame. Countless fire rings flew out from the flame and enveloped an area of several miles. Go! A huge roar came from the nascent soul's mouth. The nascent soul raised its hand again, and the snake-like whip turned into a whirlwind that wrapped around its hand. Soon after, the hand grabbed the flame. The flame borrowed the wind's power and made an even more powerful sound. Tiny thunderclaps came from the void. Strands of hair like crystal threads rushed into the flame. The flame condensed into 100 feet in size. Outside the flame, there was a layer of faint green wind flow. Fall. This sound seemed to explode from the nascent soul's body. Strands of chi waves rushed in all directions along with this sound. The flaming rock fell with a loud bang. Layers of fire flowed along the roaring mountain ridges in all directions and instantly dyed one side of the formation red. Ayo, ayo! Hundreds of tiny cries came from the mountain ridges. The mountain ridges trembled rapidly and then calmed down. Xiao Hua's first move forced Sun Kong to have no choice but to use his nascent soul dharma body. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi, who were in charge of suppressing the blue sky underworld formation, clapped their hands at the same time and released their nascent souls. Their nascent souls also solidified and turned into dharma idols that were 100 feet in size. However, Zhai Xingzi's body flashed with strands of nebula. On the other side of the nebula were the star marks that were deeply imprinted on the skin of the nascent soul. Looking at Zhang Daren's nascent soul, although there were some faint talisman scripts around it, these talisman scripts were gradually disappearing. The origin energy of heaven and earth swarmed around the nascent soul's body and not the talisman scripts. Wong Wong, Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran activated their nascent soul dharma bodies almost at the same time. The difference was that Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul's 7 orifices produced a suction force. 7 dragon-like whirlwinds whizzed into the dharma body. On the other hand, Zhang Daren's nascent soul opened the top of his head. The origin energy of heaven and earth poured in like a waterfall. For a moment, within a radius of 1,000 miles, wind and clouds surged and the weather changed greatly. Chapter 37:19. Haha. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul avatars roared at the same time. Zhai Xingzi's falling stars turned into 7 dazzling stars, and Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul avatars were in the center of the 7 stars. The 7 stars fell along with the giant hand. Boom! The earth shook, and the spring water flowed backward. The yin qi that just rose up was immediately suppressed. However, when Zhai Xingzi's main body was shaking, his eyes flashed with a very puzzled expression. Zhai Xingzi muttered to himself, "Strange, this place seems a bit strange. Why does it make me feel like this?" Seeing that Zhai Xingzi had succeeded, Zhang Daoran did not dare to be negligent. The nascent soul's hand grabbed the magic treasure, and the magic treasure descended at lightning speed. Roar! The magic treasure seemed to have come alive under the control of the nascent soul. The strange beast raised its slightly damaged head and raised its 3 hooves. A strange aura pressed down. For every 10 feet it descended, the condensed ice shards would drop by 10 feet. When the huge beast and the nascent soul's hand landed, the energy and the jade current that had surged previously charged towards the center from both ends. Boom! After the collision, everything immediately calmed down. Although there were still small ripples flowing back and forth, regardless of whether it was the mysterious pure spirit forbidding formation or the Yellow Springs formation, the damaged areas became increasingly damaged. Waves of inexplicable fluctuations surged out from those areas. The yang energy and yin energy that surged out formed thousands of air explosions in the sky above the formation. However, these air explosions were like small firecrackers in front of the 3 nascent soul avatars. They couldn't do much. The outside of the formation was very dangerous. Inside the formation, the Golden Wind Jade due origin formation was suppressed by Gongshu Exion's imperial weapon. There was no resistance at all. The brilliant, glazed, golden light Buddha formation resisted a little, but it didn't cause any big waves under the imperial weapon's copper cup and the innate true water. Seeing this, Gongshu Exion's face bloomed with a flower-like smile. If we're talking about spells, the Taoist cultivators are more powerful. These 4 cultivators are only at the upper 4th level, but they can suppress the outer layer of the Misty Mountain Maze formation. This really surprised me. Big Sister Chiao, your Zhaixing Zi is much stronger than that Sun Kong Shangren. Although Gusu Chiao Di was not proficient in the art of formations, her cultivation was stronger than Gongshu Exion's. It was easy for her to control the copper cup to defend against the Buddhist sect. Seeing that Zhaixing Zi was fine, she was relieved. Hearing Gongshu Exion's words, the corner of her mouth curled up. She used her chin to point at Xiao Hua's direction and teased. Xing Zi is considered powerful, but compared to that person, he is still lacking a lot. Look, he didn't even release his nascent soul, yet he forced Sun Kong and the others to utilize their nascent soul spirit bodies. He is the most formidable. So what if he's powerful? Gongshu Isin lazily replied. When little sister thinks that he's nearly 2,000 years old, my heart feels sick and nauseous. Sister Chiao, please don't mention it again. Gusu Chiodi opened her mouth and wanted to say something. But at this moment, a faint trace of black gas suddenly appeared between the Essence formation and Buddha formation. The black gas was filled with tiny devils, and a bloody stench instantly filled the entire formation. Devil Chi? Gusu Chiodi frowned. She didn't understand why there was devil chi here. She looked at Gongshu Exin, who was also shocked. She stared blankly at the devil chi floating out, unable to react for a moment. She also didn't understand the use of devil chi appearing in White Cloud Mountain's maze formation. But in just a moment, Gongshu Exion's expression suddenly changed, as if she thought of something. But she didn't have time to explain to Gusu Chiodi. She shouted, Sister Chiao, 5 Chi's unifications, exterminate the devil chi. Okay. When Gusu Chiodi heard this, her expression changed slightly. Without hesitation, she slapped her hand on the top of her head and tricolored chi surged out. Her entire body reached out, and the tricolored chi immediately turned into a ball of chi that was dozens of feet large. Opposite her, Gongshu Exian also activated an extremely pure 2-colored true chi. The true chi turned into 2 giant dragons, rushing towards the devil chi. Whether it was the chi ball or the chi dragon, they both let out a powerful roar. In the midst of the roar, the void cracked. The mighty chi pillar suddenly arrived, killing the thin devil chi. But Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Exian were fast, but they still couldn't be faster than the mighty chi of the Essence formation and Buddha light of the Buddha formation. As the devil chi appeared, The first to surge was the essence formation that was suppressed by Gongshu Exion's imperial artifact. The inscriptions under the Wind Mountain seemed to have seen an irreconcilable enemy. They all emitted a strong light. This light instantly drowned the Wind Mountain, rushing towards the Book City. And between the Devil Chi and the Essence Formation, there was also a mighty Chi pillar that broke through the void, attacking the Devil Chi. This mighty Chi pillar was indeed rushing towards the Devil Chi. But still, the mighty Chi pillar closest to the Essence Formation turned to attack the Book City and the Wind Mountain. The mighty Chi pillar was so mighty, and it was also the pure power of heaven and earth. How could Gongshu Exion's imperial artifact block it? Under the pincer attack, in just a moment, the inscriptions on Gongshu Exion's imperial artifact exploded one by one. Waves of mighty turbulence flew above the Essence Formation. In the turbulence, the Wind Mountain and Book City suddenly collapsed. The scrolls mixed with the writings flew all over the sky. And when these writings flew into the air, they involuntarily rushed towards the Devil Chi. The ladder-like imperial artifact flashed with multicolored light. Not only did it not restrain the crazy inscriptions, it even assisted the Essence Formation in attacking the Devil Chi. With Gongshu Exion's current cultivation level, she couldn't control the imperial artifact at all. Take drastic measures. Gongshu Exion's face was pale, her arrogant head slightly lowered, her bright eyes looking at the monstrous inscriptions and mighty Chi waves. She whispered in a low voice. She knew better than anyone that Song Longzi, who set up the Essence Formation, had already predicted her plan to break the formation. I really underestimated Senior Song Longzi. Now that things have come to this, I'm afraid we have to use that thing. Gongshu Exion couldn't control the imperial artifact. Gusu Chiodi also panicked, but Gusu Chioti's subbody used the three Chis converging to help Gongshu Exion's two-colored true Chi destroy the Devil Chi. But the Devil Chi was used by Song Longzi to set up the formation. How could it be so easily defeated? The two's true Chi destroyed a lot of the Devil Chi, but the Devil Chi was even more rampant, attacking the innate primordial water under Gusu Chioti's copper cup. Gusu Chioti's innate primordial water was powerful, but it couldn't block all of the Devil Chi. When the Devil Chi was created, the Buddha light of the glazed golden light Buddha formation shone brightly, and countless Buddhas, heavenly flowers, and heavenly dragons rushed out from the Buddha light, roaring and roaring as they rushed towards the innate primordial water. Gusu Chioti's subbody was huge, so was the Imperial Artifact's copper cup. Unfortunately, Gusu Chiodi relied on the Imperial Artifact to control the innate primordial water. She couldn't truly unleash the power of the primordial water, and even Gusu Chiodi herself didn't dare to look directly at the primordial water. Now, under the pincer attack of the Devil Chi and the Buddha light, the primordial water had already revealed a flaw. As soon as the flaw was exposed, it was immediately invaded by the demonic Chi. Sizzle. Countless sounds rang out in the void. Some were miserable cries, some were the mixing of blood and fire, and some were the roars of anger. All kinds of strange sounds came from the innate primordial water. The demonic Chi actually started a battle with the Buddhist light in the mini Kiliacosm. One battlefield after another. Lives were born and extinguished in the battle between the Buddha and the demonic Chi. This had long surpassed Gusu Chioti's expectations. Umaba Buddha. In the glazed golden light Buddha formation, an unknown Buddha chant came out, and a huge Buddha statue came out from the Buddha light. This Buddha statue was in the shape of 1,000 hands, and each hand held a Buddha weapon. In the center of each hand, there was a Buddha eye, and these Buddha hands executed techniques to subdue the devil, attacking the Devil Chi through the flaws. Gusu Chioti's face turned pale, and she also realized that when she used the innate primordial water to suppress the glazed golden light Buddha formation, the Buddha formation did not show much power. After all, the Buddha formation was the same as the cultivation of the Buddhist sect, which emphasized tolerance. But now, with the appearance of the Devil Chi, The mercy of the Buddha formation, mixed with the thunderbolts, had already exceeded the limit of her control, and the innate primordial water had already started to crumble under the pincer attack of the devil chi. This was still not the most important thing. What made Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin tremble with fear the most was that the overwhelming wave of energy and the blazing glazed golden light unavoidably came into contact with the devil energy. Waves of terrifying aura were produced between the two. Strings of bubbles disappeared into the void where the two were sent out. Moreover, the sounds of huge explosions that seemed to resound in their hearts caused the void to collapse. The two's true chi shook uncontrollably. Even their previously awe-inspiring subbodies began to tremble from the inside out. Not good. In an instant, Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin thought of the strange phenomenon recorded in the jade eyes that Xue Ping found. Wasn't the scene of a tragic attack on the Misty Mountain Maze formation like this? Go! Gongshu Isin immediately had the thought of escaping, and she looked up at Gusu Chiodi. That Gusu Chiodi also had fear in her eyes, and her Zhanqi started to shrink. However, at this moment, boom, boom, boom. The situation of the Misty Mountain Maze formation going out of control had already spread to the outer formation, and the two formations that were suppressed by Xiao Hua and the others just now started to counterattack even more crazily. But looking at the Xianqing Spirit Restricting Formation, the hundreds of ridges that were hundreds of miles long were now completely floating in the air, and huge rocks were shaking off from the ridges, and the flames that spread for dozens of miles were also extinguished under the trembling. Under the ridges, roar, the souls that were imprisoned by the formation let out valiant and unyielding and even angry roars. They were released by the formation, and Sun Kong's nascent soul Dharma body and red flame stone started to tremble under the counterattack of these souls, and patches of golden light were shaved off from the nascent soul Dharma body. Run! Sun Kong instantly had the same thought as Gongshu Isin when he faced the uncontrollable souls, and only one thought appeared in his mind. Chapter 3720. However, Master Sun Kong's nascent soul only moved a few inches before a huge force lifted him and the red flame stone several feet away. This force forced Master Sun Kong to give up. However, at this moment, Venerable Master Sun Kong's nascent soul raised his head and scanned the formation with his divine sense. The entire formation was a mess, and his divine sense was cut off by the formation. Venerable Master Sun Kong couldn't see the situation of the others clearly. However, he knew that if he stayed here and fought, it might be a dead end, but if he escaped, it would be a dead end. He didn't believe that without his suppression, Xiao Hua could resist the backlash of the hundreds of souls in the profound purity, forbidden spirit formation. Maybe I'll die. If it was before the Jade Pavilion Conference, Master Sun Kong wouldn't have cared about the life and death of others. However, after years of life and death together and the trust between them, he understood the importance of trust. Maybe I'll escape. I don't have many choices, but for that heavy trust, I have no other choice. Even if I die here today, I have to face Brother Dao Ran and Daoist Xiao, who exposed their backs to me. Forget it, then. I'll die. Thinking about this, esteemed Master Sun Kong looked at the rapidly shrinking nascent soul that was about to enter his body. He clenched his teeth and formed a seal with both hands. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. This blood essence was crimson. When the seal landed on the blood essence emitted layers of golden light. Layers of strange fluctuations appeared in the void and landed on the blood essence. Thunderous rumbles echoed in the void, and soon the blood essence was refined into a blood-red rune. Go! Master Sun Kong waved his hand, and the rune turned into a stream of light that landed between the nascent soul's eyebrows. Then, Master Sun Kong closed his eyes. Break! His divine sense rushed into the nascent soul's eyebrows like tide. Boom! A light sound came from between the nascent soul's eyebrows. As the rune landed, his divine sense also poured in, and a strange rune appeared out of thin air. It was at this moment that Master Sun Kong cut off his connection with the nascent soul. The avatar left and the nascent soul's body let out a miserable scream. Hiss! Even Master Sun Kong sucked in a breath of cold air. A heart-wrenching pain came from his Naiwan palace. This pain seemed to be unbearable. However, Master Sun Kong didn't have time to comprehend this out-of-body feeling. He clenched his teeth and formed a seal with his hands again. His entire body rapidly expanded under the influence of the seal. Roar! Seeing Sun Kong like this, the spirit monkey Chang'eng also roared at the sky. Not only did all the hair on its palm-sized body stand up, it also flashed with demonic aura, and its body began to uncontrollably expand. As Sun Kong's body expanded, his nascent soul slowly shrank. It was at this moment that Sun Kong's crimson flame stone began to crack under the attacks of the hundreds of souls. Flames shot into the sky, followed by hundreds of primordial souls. Each of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced towards Sun Kong. Woo-woo! A huge pillar of primal chi of heaven and earth descended from the sky and landed on Sun Kong's body and nascent soul. The two spirit bodies of the same size opened their eyes at the same time. Clear light flashed in their eyes, and they were filled with indifference. Roar! The spirit monkey Chang'eng transformed into a demon body that was hundreds of feet tall and flew into the air. He landed in front of the two spirits. Break! The two souls of Master Sun Kong sneered at the same time. They each reached out a hand and placed it on the spirit monkey's shoulders. Boom! Spirit monkey Chang'eng's eyes emitted light pillars that were several dozen feet in size. The two light pillars created a powerful suction force. The souls of the ferocious spirits that had already attacked Master Sun Kong were first afraid. Then they became even more ferocious. They recklessly charged at Master Sun Kong's nascent soul, as if that soul was their innate delicacy. The two light pillars were like a huge whirlpool. Every time they swept across a type of evil spirit, the evil spirit's soul would be firmly sucked in. A large number of evil spirits fell into Chang'eng's light pillars, and Chang'eng's body involuntarily expanded. However, whether it was Master Sun Kong's body or nascent soul, the large hand on Chang'eng's body also shone brightly. The souls were sucked into the two souls, reducing the pressure on Chang'eng. However, how powerful were the ancient ferocious spirits? How could the spirit monkey Chang'eng resist them? In just a few seconds, Chang'eng's face was filled with pain. His huge demon body began to swell. Even Master Sun Kong's body and nascent soul began to uncontrollably expand. The light around them rapidly trembled. Fight! Esteemed Sun Kong's face was already as white as a sheet of paper, but he let out an angry roar and took out a broken piece of jade. He opened his mouth and spat out another mouthful of essence blood. The jade expanded and turned into a palm-sized monster. This jade was actually a rare jade talisman. Shua! This jade talisman was different from Xiao Hua's phoenix illusion. As Master Sun Kong pointed his finger, the jade talisman fell between the nascent soul's eyebrows, which was where the strange rune disappeared. Roar! Master Sun Kong's nascent soul trembled in pain. Then light overflowed. As the world's origin energy crazily rushed in, the entire soul turned into the monster's shape. Woo! The monster opened its mouth and spat out a green light. Several ferocious spirits near Master Sun Kong were immediately covered and turned into streams of light that entered the monster's body. However, when the ferocious spirits entered the monster's body, the nascent soul monster's body expanded, and expanded again. Master Sun Kong's eyes flashed with desperation. Even the large hand on Chang'eng's body increased the suction force. Chang'eng's body also expanded. Ancient ferocious spirits. Even if Master Sun Kong activated the Jade Talisman and paid with his life, with his late-stage nascent soul cultivation, he might be able to devour one or two. However, There were hundreds of ferocious spirits in front of him. How many could he devour? The Misty Mountain Maze formation, even if it only had 30% of its power, was definitely not something a nascent soul cultivator could covet. Perhaps in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Master Sun Kong would be swollen by the ancient ferocious beast soul. No regrets. At this moment, Master Sun Kong's heart was filled with satisfaction. There was nothing more satisfying than this moment. That confidence that was worthy of the trust made him generously go to his death. At this critical moment, Wang, 100 miles away, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. Master Sun Kong was forced to release his nascent soul and even forced to activate a secret technique to enter the out-of-body realm. How good would Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoren be? Although the blue sky underworld formation was different from the Xianqing Spirit Forbidding Array, its power matched the Xianqing Spirit Forbidding Array. When the ferocious beast soul of the Xianqing Spirit Forbidding Array broke out, the blue sky underworld formation naturally had a corresponding change. When the fierce souls attacked Venerable Sun Kong, the blue water hidden in the formation also poured out. Waves of blood-red light flashed, and a bloody aura that would make one's blood boil rushed out of the formation. Among this aura, a strand of blood-red nether water that was smaller than a thumb rushed into the air along with a strand of blue water that was more than 100 feet thick. This, Zhang Daoran and his nascent soul dharma bodies, 4 eyes flashed with disbelief. Zhang Daoran's main body almost cried out, "This is the yellow spring water?" Yes, wasn't that blood-red water the extremely rare yellow spring water in the hidden immortal continent? Countless runes flashed in the green water. The runes were not only used to set up the formation, but also to confine the yellow spring water. Gong Shuisen said that the green water's power was not as powerful as before. The truth was that the core of the blue sky underworld formation was inside the formation. All the yin qi and water that appeared outside the formation was just a cover to hide the ferocious teeth of the blue sky underworld formation. At that moment, Zhang Daoran used a dharma treasure to suppress the yin qi within the formation. However, when the yin qi receded, the water of the yellow springs surged again. The runes in the water of the yellow springs peeled off layer by layer. The blood-red water of the yellow springs quickly dyed the water red. The huge water flow was like a blood dragon rushing through the formation and pouncing towards Zhang Daoran. If it was Zhang Daoran before the Yaodai conference, he might not be able to recognize the yellow spring water, or he might not be so afraid of it. However, Zhang Daoran obtained one of the 3 exotic treasures of the Yaodai conference, the cold ghost gall. Although he had not completely refined the cold ghost gall, he had a keen sense of the netherworld's items and knew the power of the yellow spring water. Zhang Daoran was only a late Yuanying stage cultivator. Even if he reached out-of-body or function stage, his physical body, his Yuanying spirit body, could not touch a trace of the yellow spring water. The yellow spring water was death qi, and the Yuanying was a spirit body. Zhang Daoran could use a secret technique to refine the cold ghost gall with his spirit body, but he definitely did not dare to refine the yellow spring water. Run! Zhang Daoran had the same feeling as Sun Kong Shangren. A way out appeared in his heart. Moreover, Zhang Daoran was very confident that although the water of the yellow springs had begun to overflow, with his nascent soul and the refined ghost guts, he would definitely be able to escape unscathed from the yellow springs. Run? It was just a thought, but Zhang Daoran immediately killed it. After he escaped, the Misty Mountain Maze would lose its balance, and the entire formation would kill everyone on the spot. Moreover, once he left, the Yellow Spring Heaven formation would crazily counterattack Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi would definitely not be able to resist it. Other than death, there would be no other ending for Zhai Xingzi. Zhang Daoran might not have Xiao Hua's heaven-defying luck, but the mercy in his heart was not much less than Xiao Hua's, or even more. Since he did not intend to escape, Zhang Daoran immediately made a decision. Chapter 37:21. Zhang Daren's hands formed a seal, and he waved his hand. A strange, black object flew out from his chest. It looked like a giant rock, but it was also very broken. Poof! Zhang Daren opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Ga! The giant rock let out a long cry, and extremely strange runes came out from its body. They turned into a red halo that surrounded the giant rock. Rise! Zhang Daren let out a roar, and his entire body became a hurricane. As the red halo shined, it also began to expand like crazy. Shwa! A giant wave came, and a death aura mixed with blood rushed toward the rock. Roar! The magic treasure controlled by Zhang Daren's nascent soul also let out a roar, and a red halo appeared around its body. The shape of this halo was similar to the rock's. Countless halos appeared before Zhang Daren and the nascent soul. When the blue water fell on the halos, it was immediately divided into dozens of small streams. However, within these small streams, the water of the underworld was still there. Right at this moment, Zhang Daren's nascent soul spat out azure light from its mouth, and the infernal glacial ghost gallbladder that was in its hand instantly fell into the light. Wong wong! Violent vibrations erupted from the infernal glacial ghost gallbladder, and a series of ghostly heads emerged from within with hair-thin, translucent threads intertwined between them. The phantom chill ghost gallbladder fell into the light, and the nascent soul sucked. The phantom chill ghost gallbladder followed the light into the nascent soul's mouth. The moment the phantom chill ghost gallbladder touched the nascent soul, Zhang Daren's body flashed. Just like Sun Kong, Zhang Daren cut off his own origin soul. However, Zhang Daren's timing was clearly more mature than Sun Kong's. Aside from the pain on his face, there was also a hint of nervousness. Boom! Icy flames mixed with the smell of blood emerged from the nascent soul's head and washed down the nascent soul's face. Go all out! Zhang Daren's Dharma body, which was almost 100 feet tall, also urged his true essence. He cast one strange spell after another. Wherever his magic power fell, the yellow spring water from the 2 magic treasure rings was drawn into the nascent soul. Sizzle! The nascent soul's spiritual body collapsed as soon as it touched the yellow spring water. However, the icy flames and blood that fell from the nascent soul's head rushed over and fought with the water of the yellow springs. Phew! Zhang Daren heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Then, he pointed at the 2 magic treasures again. 2 eye-like cracks appeared on the back of the magic treasures, and 2 dark hurricanes emerged from them. The water of the underworld in the halo was instantly sucked in by the hurricanes. Zhang Daren sighed as he watched his nascent soul collapse and reform from time to time. The ghostly frigid guts and the water of the underworld were locked in a tug-of-war. He endured the pain of his body being corroded by the water of the underworld and looked at the blurry array in the distance. He said in his heart, "Fellow Taoists, this old man can only do this much. Before I die, I will buy as much time as I can. I hope you can safely retreat. As the saying goes, when someone is sad, there will naturally be someone who is happy." Just as the water of the underworld gushed out crazily, the runes in the water were chipped off layer by layer due to the array's attacks. The water of the underworld dyed the water red, and the huge blood dragon roared and rushed towards Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi was shocked at first. However, when the bloody aura and the unparalleled qi of death rushed into his nascent soul, the starlight around his nascent soul swelled like a lantern. A strange expression appeared on Zhai Xingzi's face, as if he had seen the most inconceivable thing in the world. He actually cried out in a low voice, "Damn it! No wonder this old man felt that this place was very strange. It turns out that the array here actually contains the water of the underworld. I've searched for who knows how many years, and I actually found it here today. Heavens! Is this old man's luck finally here? Or did my luck change after I followed Xiaohua?" As Zhai Xingzi laughed secretly, the water of the underworld had already rushed into the air. Zhai Xingzi patted his head again. Puff! Several streams of true energy spurted out. Amidst these streams of true energy, a talisman half the size of a palm surged out like a moon surrounded by stars. Although this talisman was only half a piece, it was densely covered with star runes. The star runes formed strange runes. As the streams of true energy landed on it, strands of star runes flickered. Between these flickering star runes, there vaguely appeared stars of various sizes. He then looked at Zhai Xingzi's other hand. He reached into his Qinquan bag and took out a black, ancient magic tool. This magic tool had 9 bends. Between the bends, there were crystals that emitted a strange light. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul waved its hand. The falling star that had previously transformed into a 7-star flew into the air, still in the shape of a 7-star. Immediately, the nascent soul grabbed, and the demonic artifact fell into the nascent soul's hand, once again combining with the 7 stars. Collect. Zhai Xingzi chanted an incantation. The 7 stars emitted starlight that rushed into the demonic artifact's crystal. Wave after wave of star rings emerged from the demonic artifact, falling onto the water of the underworld. That water of the underworld was immediately absorbed by the star rings into the demonic artifact. The water of the underworld that practically could not resist corrosion was unexpectedly absorbed by Zhai Xingzi's ineffable demonic artifact. Good. Zhai Xingzi's originally anxious heart instantly relaxed. He thought to himself, the nameless ancient scrolls cultivation method is indeed not bad. This demonic artifact can absorb the water of the underworld. In this way, this water of the underworld naturally can help me step into out-of-body realm. As he thought this, Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul's other hand slapped downwards. The star crest that had previously flown out from Zhai Xingzi's Niwen palace landed on the hand. The nascent soul slowly raised its hand, as if a giant mountain peak was suspended in its hand. However, although this hand appeared slow, it was actually extremely fast. In no more than a few breaths' time, the hand pinched the star crest and placed it on its own forehead. Boom! An extremely brilliant starlight flashed from the nascent soul's forehead. The nascent soul's entire spirit body immediately became illusory. Specks that were like brilliant stars covered the nascent soul's entire spirit body. Break! Just like Master Sun Kong, Zhai Xingzi silently chanted an incantation. His mind's connection with the nascent soul's primordial spirit was severed. Zhai Xingzi's face showed an expression of pain. Wong Wong. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul let out a rumbling sound. Its entire spirit body suddenly compressed, condensing into a fist-sized star core in an instant. Success or failure depends on this one move. Zhai Xingzi steeled his heart. His hand seals activated, and that vast and mighty underworld water was immediately divided into a stream that charged towards the star core. The star core was submerged by the underworld water, letting out an unpleasant hissing sound. Wisps of green smoke emitted from the star core. When the first stream of underworld water dripped down, that star core unexpectedly transformed into 365 tiny fragments. These fragments did not have starlight, but even the underworld water could not melt these fragments. Boom! Immediately afterwards, another stream of underworld water washed down. Zhai Xingzi's corporeal body slightly trembled. When the underworld water fell, those 360 fragments again shrunk by half. Zhai Xingzi endured an indescribable pain. This pain was more severe than having his tendons pulled out and his bones pulled out. This pain originated from his soul. This was precisely the pain of refining the soul that was mentioned in the secret art. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul star core was washed no less than 9 times with the underworld water. Not only were each fragment as small as they could be, but each fragment also flashed with a trace of bloody light. What a pity! Zhai Xingzi's whole body convulsed into a ball. Hiding behind the demonic weapon, he avoided the torrential underworld water. He secretly regretted in his heart. According to the secret art, the more underworld water washes, the more beneficial it is for the nascent soul. Unfortunately, my cultivation is not enough, so I can only wash 9 of them. If I can wash 9 of them, not to mention stepping into the spirit's severing stage, even crossing the heavenly tribulation is within reach. Forget it. Just as he regretted, Zhai Xing Zi woke up again. Opportunities are opportunities. In this moment, I can use the underworld water to cleanse my body. The demonic weapon also contains the underworld water. In the future, there is hope for me to refine the star arts. Why should I think more? Immediately, Zhai Xing Zi urged on the secret art again. A mouthful of essence blood fell onto those 365 star cores. Wong wong. Several hundred star cores vibrated at the same time, each emitting faint star markings. These star markings floated in midair, forming a complete star crest. Boom, boom, boom. A myriad of heaven-earth origin chi condensed into a hurricane that fell towards the star crest. Strands of sparkling light flickered, and thunderbolts similarly struck down. An extremely small nascent soul appeared from the flat star crest. It slowly swelled, reaching more than 100 zhong. But this nascent soul's entire body was covered in star markings under the thunderbolts. Following the disappearance of the thunderbolts, all of the star markings also disappeared. The entire nascent soul was incomparably solid, no different from an ordinary corporeal body. The nascent soul originally had its eyes closed. When the spirit body was completed, the nascent soul opened its eyes. Its 2 black pupils flashed with endless starlight. Swoosh! The nascent soul suddenly opened its eyes. Both of its hands waved, and 2 pillars of starlight fell onto the still roaring underworld water. That water flow instantly quieted, and the blood color markings quietly contracted. 100 li away, an anomaly suddenly appeared. Zhai Xing Zi raised his head to look. It was precisely Xiao Hua's North Pole. Xiao Hua. A slight smile suddenly appeared on Zhai Xing Zi's originally pained face. He turned his head to look at his nascent soul that seemed to have been reborn after breaking through. Then, he looked at the already receding underworld water. Unexpectedly, he used his hand to rub his nose and laughed. This kind of opportunity, even this old man can benefit from it. Presumably, Master Sun Kong and Zhang Daoran can also do the same. We are already like this, so what fortuitous encounter did Taoist Master Xiao have? It's a pity that this old man's divine intent cannot pass through. That is, when Zhai Xingzi muttered to himself here, he saw that at the north pole of the cloud mountain bewildering array, hundreds of magnificent lights soared into the sky, imposing and vast. Back to Xiao Hua, when that profound purity spirit forbidding great array gave birth to an anomaly, Master Sun Kong's nascent soul body was sent flying into the air by the power of hundreds of vicious spirits. Xiao Hua and Master Sun Kong respectively suppressed the head and tail of the mountain ridge. The force of impact he received was not any less than Master Sun Kong's. However, how could Master Sun Kong compare to Xiao Hua's cultivation? Moreover, when Xiao Hua saw that the force coming from the bottom of the great array was about to overturn his body, he immediately roared and took out the wishful staff. He gathered his strength and fiercely struck at the bottom of the great array. Chapter 37:22. There was a loud boom. As the wishful steel staff fell, the fierce soul attacking Xiao Hua was immediately suppressed. Of course, this suppression was only temporary. With the strength of Sun Kong, he could only resist 1 or 2 fierce souls. Xiao Hua suppressing 4 or 5 of them was already good. Immediately, hundreds of fierce souls broke out from the ruins on the ridge and rushed madly toward Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was shocked and urged the heavenly law embodiment technique. The hurricane within a radius of 10 miles suddenly rose, and countless heaven and earth essence chi poured into Xiao Hua's golden body. Beat! Xiao Hua waved the wishful staff in one hand and sent the fierce souls flying. His other hand clenched into a fist, and almost one in each hand. The fierce souls were also sent rolling in the air. Unfortunately, the ancient said that 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. What's more, Xiaohua was facing hundreds of fierce souls. Which one of these fierce souls was not a powerful beast in the past? Although after thousands of years of tempering, these fierce souls had dissipated a lot, but it was still not something that Xiaohua could resist alone. Although Xiaohua's staff technique was exquisite, although Xiaohua's fists and feet were unparalleled, in just a moment, Xiaohua was already a little tired. Where is the green-robed friend? Xiaohua saw that he was unable to resist and did not dare to neglect, so he shouted, "Woo!" Above Xiaohua's head, a 6-colored brilliance suddenly appeared and enveloped a fierce soul that was pouncing towards him. Ayo, ayo! The fierce soul tumbled in the air and howled in grief. That fierce soul's figure had become much dimmer. Woo woo woo! The green-robed Xiaohua took control of the invisible Yuanying and urged the Kunlun mirror to destroy the enemies. Similarly, after another moment, the green-robed Xiaohua felt that it was somewhat strenuous. Although the Kunlun mirror was powerful, it had not reached the point where it could kill the ferocious soul. Although the ferocious soul temporarily retreated, when it counterattacked again, its strength became even more powerful. The light beam of the Kunlun mirror became more and more difficult to condense, and its power began to decline. Rumble! Seeing this, the green-robed Xiaohua did not hesitate to grab with his hand. Countless heavenly thunder appeared out of thin air and fell on hundreds of fierce souls. Swoosh! Seeing the heavenly lightning falling, a thin mist was produced in the blue sky underworld formation. There were traces of blood-colored underworld water in the mist, and the heavenly lightning turned into nothing when it fell into the mist. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed angrily. He knew that Song Longzi had already plotted against him using the thunder-drawing technique. Boom, boom, boom. The heavenly lightning did not fall, but the ferocious spirits were stimulated by the heavenly lightning's might. Ferocious spirits of different colors and shapes rolled down the mountain rocks, roaring as they rushed out of the great formation. Each and every one of them bare their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced toward Xiaohua. How terrifying! As he looked at the ferocious spirits that were far more ferocious than him, Xiaohua felt a sense of powerlessness. He could execute a divine ability to kill one, or he could rack his brains to kill 10, but he couldn't kill a few hundred ferocious spirits at once. Although Xiaohua's fleshly body had been tempered to an incomparably solid state by the enormous stone formation of Yaotai Mountain, it was still slightly insufficient in front of these ferocious spirits. Xiaohua could imagine that if he were to be careless and allowed these ferocious spirits to get close to him, not to mention his fleshly body, even his golden body might be torn apart by the ferocious spirits. What should I do? Xiaohua was at his wit's end. Roar. Right at this moment, a ferocious spirit that looked like a jackal and wolf pounced over. That ferocious aura once again rushed towards Xiaohua's mind. Xiao and I. Suddenly, a familiar figure and name appeared in Xiaohua's mind. That was the ferocious spirit that almost killed Xiaohua and Xiao Ming when he was building his foundation many years ago. How could Xiaohua forget about it? Furthermore, a secret technique that Xiaohua had almost forgotten about also appeared. Spirit Husbandry Sect. Spirit Awakening 5 Accumulations Formation. Xiaohua's previous memories instantly flashed through his mind, and he recalled the situation of the Spirit Husbandry Sect when he was building his foundation in the Flame Forest Swamp. Damn it! Didn't I get the secret technique to absorb the souls of ferocious spirits from that Spirit Husbandry Sect disciple? Thinking of this, a strange expression appeared on Xiaohua's face. That's right, the secret technique that he had almost forgotten about and the hundreds of ferocious spirits in front of him. Now that they were gathered together, wasn't he the catalyst to unlock the profound purity spirit sealing array? Xiaohua silently recited the secret technique in his mind a few times and he had already comprehended it in a short while. Then he saw the green-robed Xiao Hua waving his hand, and the Kunlun mirror was kept in his body. Then he slapped his head with one hand. Pooh! A beam of light shot up into the sky from his head and landed on the nearest ferocious spirit. Roar, roar! The ferocious spirit roared and wanted to dodge, but the light was like a maggot that stuck to its bones. No matter how the ferocious spirit struggled, it couldn't escape. Furthermore, the light produced a strange wave and suction force that tore the ferocious spirit into pieces and absorbed it. In just a moment, the ferocious spirit became much dimmer. Needless to say, as long as Xiao Hua had enough time, he would definitely be able to easily absorb this ferocious spirit. The secret technique of the spirit husbandry sect was indeed the nemesis of ferocious spirits. Roar! This ferocious spirit roared, and it was very tragic. More and more ferocious spirits nearby heard it and rushed over. Green-robed Taoist, please return. Xiao Hua sneered and ordered. Green-robed Xiao Hua urged his formless nascent soul to enter his dantian. Where's the soul cultivator? Xiao Hua shouted again. I'm coming. A green light flashed, and soul cultivator Xiao Hua appeared in his dantian. His hands were like dancing butterflies, and in an instant, a green mark appeared between the eyebrows of the 140 nascent souls in Xiao Hua's dantian. Rise! Soul cultivator Xiao Hua softly called out. These nascent souls simultaneously raised their left hands and hit their own heads. Rise! Xiao Hua's nascent soul sat cross-legged on top of these nascent souls' heads. The head of his nascent soul sprayed out a brilliance, and the heads of the 100 nascent souls also sprayed out a multicolored brilliance. Under the leadership of Xiao Hua's nascent soul, hundreds of brilliance sprayed out from Xiao Hua's head. Rumble! These 100 or so brilliance might not be conspicuous in Xiao Hua's dantian, but when they came out of his dantian, they were a myriad of phenomena. Not only did they produce a rumbling sound, they also stirred up the world's origin energy. One by one, they turned into pillars of light several feet in size and soared into the sky. Not only did they illuminate the North Pole, where Xiao Hua was located, but they also illuminated the entire 100-mile radius of the Misty Mountain Bewildering Array. The indescribable phenomenon shrouded the area around Xiao Hua and immediately attracted the attention of 3 nascent soul cultivators and 2 Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua stood in midair with a calm expression and looked at the 100 or so brilliance that soared into the sky. He calmly chanted a mantra. Swoosh! The 100 or so brilliance descended, and every single brilliance enveloped an ancient ferocious soul. Every single nascent soul was executing the secret technique of spirit husbandry sect in Xiao Hua's lower dantian. Strands and pieces of ferocious souls were refined by this secret technique and rushed into the spirit bodies of the nascent souls. Every single nascent soul's spirit body was visibly swelling up. Rumble! The Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua in his middle dantian also didn't miss the opportunity to execute the 5 Qi righteous lightning. The places where the lightning landed were like the water of the netherworld, cleansing Zhaixing Zi's nascent soul's spirit body. It cleansed the ferocious souls that were absorbed into the spirit body mercilessly and helped the nascent soul to absorb them. None of the hundreds of ancient ferocious souls were inferior to Chao Ho. In fact, every single one of them was even more ferocious than Chao Ho. They were all ferocious souls that Song Lang Zi had carefully selected to guard the door. How bad could they be? Although they had been imprisoned in this profound purity spirit forbidding great array for tens of millions of years, they still had the nourishment of the great array. Although the restriction of the great array had gradually been worn down, they were still as ferocious as before. Now that they saw someone actually challenging them, how could they dodge? One by one, they gathered the souls that they had distributed within the great array and madly attacked Xiao Hua. Buzz! Xiao Hua frowned. His divine sense rushed out and did his best to resist the imprisonment of the great array. Although he couldn't rush out more than 10 miles, within a range of a few miles, Xiao Hua could still barely resist. However, these ferocious souls were really too powerful. Just as Xiao Hua's divine sense was set up, it was immediately shattered by them. Xiao Hua had no choice but to release his divine sense again. But even so, Xiao Hua's divine sense was able to block the ferocious souls every time to prevent him from being surrounded and killed. This gave him time to absorb these ferocious souls. Seeing so many ferocious souls like carps crossing the river, Xiao Hua did his best to resist while unconsciously narrowing his eyes and smiling. Little ones, take your time, take your time. This place here is warm and tight. You've been lonely outside for tens of millions of years. Now go home. Follow this Lord and you'll eat and drink well. Just as Venerable Master Sun Kong was about to drink poison to quench his thirst, he suddenly heard a deafening roar from 100 miles away. Then, a vision suddenly appeared. Hundreds of light pillars soared into the sky and landed within the great array. Others might not be able to see it clearly, but Venerable Master Sun Kong's senses were sharp. Every light pillar landed on an ancient, ferocious soul. The ferocious souls that had previously pounced on him like a tide were now like a falling tide. They were all attracted by the light pillars and pounced on the light pillars one after another. Only a few ferocious souls that had been sucked in by his yuaning didn't leave despite their extreme struggles. Xiao, Taoist Master Xiao, how can he be so powerful? The source of that brilliance was precisely where Xiao Hua was. Venerable Master Sun Kong truly didn't dare to believe his eyes. What kind of divine ability was this? He had just faced an ancient ferocious soul, so he was very clear in his heart. Every ferocious soul had the strength of yuaning and above. He had already reached his limit by barely dealing with two. How could Xiao Hua deal with hundreds of ferocious souls? However, Venerable Master Sun Kong clearly sensed that every light pillar had the strength of a yuaning. Hundreds of light pillars. That was the strength of 100 yuaning. Xiao Hua. What cultivation level is he at? Venerable Master Sun Kong originally had an overestimation of Xiao Hua, but now he was even more certain that Xiao Hua was unfathomable. So much so that an extreme sense of loss spontaneously arose from the bottom of his heart. Yes, if Xiao Hua could resist the attacks of 10 Venerable Masters, Venerable Master Sun Kong wouldn't necessarily be envious. But this was the attack of 100 Venerable Masters. How could Venerable Master Sun Kong endure this? In the instant that Venerable Master Sun Kong felt lost, his Tao heart became slightly unstable. His monstrous yuaning suddenly shook and wanted to return to human form. Chapter 37:23. Oh no, this is bad. Sun Kong Shangren is startled. He immediately calms his mind and activates his secret technique. He secretly cries out, "Why am I suddenly confused at this time? There must be geniuses in this world. There must be almighty people who are stronger than me. Rather than letting this almighty person be my enemy, it's better to let this almighty person be my old friend. It's my good fortune to be able to meet Taoist Master Xiao. Not to mention that because of Taoist Xiao, I joined hands with Zhang Daoran in the Jade Pavilion Conference and avoided the ending where both sides suffered heavy losses. Not to mention that because of this, I obtained the Green Abyss Dragon Saliva. Today, because of Taoist Xiao, I was able to make great progress in my cultivation because of the secret technique. Based on this alone, what qualifications do I have to be jealous of Taoist Xiao? I can't thank him enough, right? But why is my Tao heart suddenly unstable? Oh no! Sun Kong Shangren suddenly realizes something. A burst of ecstasy rushes into his heart. Could it be that I'm going to break through? Soon after, Sun Kong Shangren didn't dare to think too much. He tried his best to connect with his nascent soul and let go of the ominous soul that he couldn't completely control, leaving only the ominous soul that he could control to continue absorbing. However, just as Sun Kong's shaman was going all out, a trace of doubt appeared. Perhaps Xiaohua also has the same idea as this old man. He may not be able to deal with these vicious souls, but he wants to sacrifice himself to save our lives. At this time, Xiaohua is naturally not fighting alone. More than 100 nascent souls are fighting together. With these 100 nascent souls, the Xianxing spirit forbidding formation is no longer a threat. After absorbing hundreds of ancient vicious souls, it's only a matter of time before his cultivation improves greatly. Moreover, as the Xianxing spirit forbidding formation stabilizes, the Yellow Springs formation of the Cloudy Mountain maze starts to wreak havoc again. Oh, what's this? The aura of the Yellow Springs water weakens and floats to Xiaohua's left side. Xiaohua frowns. His heart is moved. Netherworld water? This formation? Oh, I understand. In just an instant, Xiaohua came to a sudden realization. His admiration for Cang Longzi was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. This is a formation master. This is a senior of our Taoism. It's fine if he doesn't make a move, but once he does, it will definitely shock the heavens and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. With this ancient ferocious soul and the netherworld water, the balance of yin and yang, the fusion of life and death, is truly difficult to resist. Oh no! If that's the case, then Zhang Daoran and Zhaixing Zi will be in deep trouble. If it was anyone else, it would surely be difficult to deal with this netherworld water that was filled with death qi, and they would surely have no choice but to flee if they didn't possess a great divine ability or an unusual secret technique. However, for Xiaohua, it was an extremely simple task, especially now that he had successfully tempered his divine will. Quick! While thinking, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth, and the Kunlun mirror flew out. Xiaohua formed a seal and hit the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror emitted a six-colored brilliance from midair and covered the area around Xiaohua. Then, Xiaohua withdrew his divine will and swept it towards the netherworld water. As soon as he touched it, his divine will was immediately corroded by the netherworld water. However, the moment Xiaohua's divine will was corroded, the netherworld water immediately flowed into the inside of the space like a trickle. For Xiaohua, who had the inside of the space, collecting the netherworld water, was that simple. Xiaohua was that willful. Using his mind to absorb things was naturally much easier than using a secret technique to absorb the primordial ferocious souls. After a short while, the primordial spirit forbidding formation and the Yellow Springs formation returned to a temporary balance. The raging primordial qi of heaven and earth and the rampant restrictive spells slowly calmed down, and the formation within 100 miles became calm again. No one knew that Xiaohua had actually taken away the uncontrollable water of the Yellow Springs without anyone noticing. Both Zhaixing Zi and Zhang Daoran saw the phenomenon of Xiaohua absorbing the ancient ferocious soul clearly. However, Zhang Daoran didn't think that Xiaohua could help him. The Yellow Springs formation was so powerful. Needless to say, the profound purity spirit forbidding formation was even more so. Even if Xiaohua could break the profound purity spirit forbidding formation, he probably couldn't save him from danger. Moreover, the Netherworld Chill Ghost Gallbladder was refined by Zhang Daoran with the help of the Netherworld water. It only took the time to drink a cup of tea to finish. Of course, this kind of action was more of a resistance than a refinement. Without the Netherworld Chill Ghost Gallbladder, Zhang Daoran didn't have the strength to resist the Netherworld water. Thus, while Zhang Daoran was hoping that Xiaohua and Sun Kong would be able to escape the formation alive, he also used his cultivation technique to fuse the refined Netherfrost Ghost Gall into his nascent soul, once again resisting the corrosion of the Yellow Springs. Between life and death, Zhang Daoran didn't have any extra thoughts to be happy about his cultivation rising. He only wanted to resist for as long as possible. Until the end, He realized that the netherworld water was gradually decreasing. There were even signs of it drying up. What's going on? Zhang Daoran was surprised at first, then he was ecstatic. The reason why the netherworld water was decreasing was no longer important to him. The important thing was that he didn't have to die. The important thing was he could use the remaining netherworld water to integrate the netherworld chill ghost gallbladder that wasn't completely refined into his nascent soul. Thinking of this, Zhang Daoran didn't dare to delay. This was an opportunity that was fleeting. Zhang Daoran didn't have time to withdraw his Dharma body. He sat cross-legged in mid-air and started to cultivate. Zhang Daoran, who was in the most dangerous situation, was already fine. Zhai Xingzi, who used the water of the underworld to cultivate, was even less of a threat. When he saw that the water of the underworld had slowed down, he was happy because he didn't have to divide his attention to resist the water of the underworld. He only had to finish practicing his secret technique before the water of the underworld disappeared. Actually, to Zhai Xingzi, the most important thing was the beginning of the cleansing of the star core by the netherworld water. That was to use the chi of death to wash away the impurities in the nascent soul, then use the chi of life to cultivate the nascent soul from the star core. After this stage, the netherworld water could only be used as a support. What was truly useful was his secret technique and the chi of heaven and earth. When Xiaohua started to collect the netherworld water, a 3-inch nascent soul was already born from the netherworld water. When the chi of death and chi of life were in a stalemate, it slowly grew. Strands of starlight lingered around the nascent soul's body as the secret technique was activated. After Xiaohua made his move, the outer layer of the Misty Mountain maze had already started to calm down. Unfortunately, this tranquility only lasted for a few breaths. The huge explosion that caused the outer layer to tremble rumbled once again from the center of the formation. Two auras that were even more terrifying than the hundreds of ancient ferocious souls in the underworld water rushed out. The chaos that had just calmed down in the outer layer was born again. No matter if it was the spirits or the netherworld water, they started to struggle again. Sigh, one wave after another. Xiaohua sighed in his heart as he urged his mind to collect the water of the netherworld. Then he flew toward the center of the chi that seemed to be able to destroy the world. Following Xiaohua's body, the hundreds of light pillars and ancient spirits also flew up. These light pillars were now controlled by the green-robed Xiaohua and the soul cultivator Xiaohua in his lower dantian. There was no need for Xiaohua to worry about them. When the overwhelming chi wave and the dazzling golden light clashed against each other, a string of bubbles sounded in the void. The void in front of Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin collapsed. The entire inner formation was completely out of control. Not to mention Gongshu Isin, who was only a 4th-grade elemental energy cultivator. Even Gusu Chiodi, who was a 5th-grade elemental energy cultivator, couldn't help but have a huge change in expression. She wanted to escape. However, what the two didn't expect was that Gongshu Isin was too careless. She placed herself and Gusu Chiodi in the inner formation. This was the most appropriate method, but at the same time, it was also the most dangerous method. Just when the inner formation went out of control and affected the outer formation, the area around the two was already sealed by the mystic pure spirit sealing formation and the heaven fall underworld formation. Not to mention escaping. Even if they were to fly up a few feet, they would be restrained by the yin and yang forces of the netherworld water and the netherworld water. Facing the two outer formations, Sun Kong Shangren and Zhang Daoran already had thoughts of escaping. How much power could Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin have to resist? Especially Gusu Chiodi. Seeing the outer formation shaking, she was already worried for Zhai Xingzi. She knew that escaping wasn't the best choice. The inner formation was the core of the formation. Only by stabilizing the inner formation with Gongshu Isin and herself, or even as long as they stabilized the inner formation for an extremely short period of time, the outer formation would be stabilized as well. Only then would she be able to escape with everyone else. spinning a cocoon around ourselves. This is the real definition of spinning a cocoon around ourselves. Of course, Gongshu Isin also sensed that her escape route was sealed. Her originally firm state of mind was shaken. In my life, I don't know how many primordial formations and Dharma formations I've solved. Now, I'm trapped in a Dharma formation. It seems like the ancient people are right. I must die today. However, to be able to see such a beautiful Taoist formation, I have no regrets in this life. Yes, the outer formation had 2 layers of shocking Taoist formations. The inner formation was against the Buddhist formation. In the middle, there was even devilish Qi as a guide. In Gongshu Isin's eyes, such a great formation was more beautiful than the most beautiful scenery in the world. She really felt blessed to be buried in it. In the chaos of space, the explosive forces were like cultivators attacking blindly and crazily. There was no pattern at all. Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin couldn't be distracted by the primordial and Buddhist formations anymore. The only thing they could do now was to protect themselves. Their previously majestic subbodies were torn apart by the forces everywhere. They were in pain. However, the 2 of them didn't dare to completely retract their subbodies. The scarred subbodies were barely able to protect their main bodies from the attacks of the inner formation. However, the torn subbodies didn't seem to be able to protect the 2 for long. Isin, Gusu Chiodi's desire to live was much stronger than Gongshu Isin's. She still didn't want to give up. While trying to stabilize the primordial water, she transmitted her voice, "What should we do now?" Gongshu Isin looked at the imperial equipment that was still standing in the violent airwaves. In fact, it was shaking violently. Her face was unusually pale. There wasn't a trace of fear in her eyes. Chapter 37-24. Hearing Gusu Chiodi's question, Gongshu Isin shook her head slightly. "Sister Chio, I'm at my wit's end. Though I still have some tricks up my sleeve, Senior Tsang Longzi didn't just test the art of formations, he also tested my cultivation. Though I know how to break it, I can't stop the demonic aura with my remaining tricks. Also, the 4 Taoist seniors on the outer layer aren't bad either. They might be able to stop the 2 great formations on the outer layer, but to stop the demonic aura, it's beyond their power. What's more, right now, the vast Qi wave and the dazzling glazed golden light have begun to clash with each other. We have already fallen into Senior Tsang Longzi's trap. None of the 6 of us have the ability to separate these 2 things. This." Gusu Chiodi felt incredulous and said in surprise, "If it's as you said, then this cloudy mountain maze formation must be attacked by 7 7th level essence energy experts at the same time to break." "That's right." Gongshu Isin's eyes were blurred. She nodded. For Taoist cultivators to suppress the 4 outer layers, 1 Confucian cultivator to suppress the golden wind and jade dew, 1 Buddhist cultivator to suppress the golden light and jade dew, and 1 demon to extract the demonic aura. Alas, only now did I understand the meaning of the golden wind and jade dew. Once the golden wind and jade dew meet, it's better than countless things in the mortal world. Actually, Senior Tsang Longzi had already told us that the golden wind and jade dew is an essence formation and a Buddhist formation, but I didn't expect it. I'm too far behind Senior Tsang Longzi. Gusu Chiodi ignored Gongshu Isin's disappointment. She frowned. It's not realistic to gather 7 experts of such cultivation. Is this Misty Mountain Maze formation unbreakable? Of course it's unbreakable when Senior Tsang Longzi is meditating in the cave. Gongshu Isin said, "Didn't I say it before? Now that the formation only has 30% of its power, we might need 7 people to work together. Now that the formation has so many flaws, we don't need to work together. As long as we stabilize the inner layer, break the outer layer, break the inner layer, and find the way into the cave." However, it's a pity that even though it's only 30% of the formation, our strength is still insufficient. It's impossible for us to enter the cave. Are we really hopeless? Gusu Chiodi was also disappointed. She didn't dare to use her chi of nature or genuine chi to attack the bright, glazed golden light Buddhist sect. She could only use her imperial equipment to activate the innate primordial water. However, this method had little effect. Little sister can die in such a formation. Xiao Jiejie can die with her lover. Gongshu Isin said lightly, "We have no regrets in this life." Sai, that's right. That day, that moment, that glance seems to have been imprinted in my heart forever. Gusu Chiodi looked at the primordial formation and Buddhist formation that were about to merge together. She knew that the moment the two merged together would be the moment of everyone's death. She couldn't help but murmur. Perhaps at that moment, the heavens began to fulfill our wish of loving each other forever. You are the metal wind in the primordial formation. Zhai Xingzi is the jade dew in the Buddhist formation. The demonic chi is the heavenly palace that separates the two of you. Gongshu Isin said coldly, "If you can't erase this demonic chi, you can never meet again." Gusu Chiodi's eyes slightly blinked. She looked at the increasingly violent aura and asked thoughtfully, "Isin, if you want to stop this formation and save us from this danger, you only need to erase this demonic chi? How can it be that simple?" At this moment, Gongshu Isin seemed to be talking to a close friend. Her tone was calm as she said, "This misty mountain maze formation needs to be broken from the inside out. Only by suppressing the primordial formation and Buddhist sect in the inner layer can we have a chance to suppress the two yin-yang formations in the outer layer. And now, the biggest possibility is to erase the demonic chi, then suppress the Confucian formation and Buddhist sect separately. Unfortunately, not to mention the inner formation, the outer formation is already raging. No one can stop it. What if someone can stop it?" Gusu Chiodi suddenly thought of something and asked. Gongshu Isin shook her head slightly. "Impossible. There can't be a cultivator who is proficient in the essence of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism." While they were talking, the impact of the primordial formation and Buddhism sect had already begun. The waves that soared into the sky began to bloom. No matter if it was Gusu Chiodi or Gongshu Isin, although they tried their best to activate their cultivation and unleash the greatest power of the two imperial weapons, their power was too weak. It was even weaker than an ant trying to shake a tree. The two sub-bodies collapsed and could no longer protect the two of them. Gusu Chiodi and Gongshu Isin were the same as Zhang Daoran. Their hearts were as cold as ashes. However, they were still inferior to Zhang Daoran. Zhang Daoran still had a trace of hope, but they only had despair. However, just as the destructive aura filled the entire formation, the two female cultivators' hearts were like dead ashes. They could only rely on the thought in their hearts to maintain the formation. Suddenly, Gusu Chiodi shouted, "Exin, hurry up! The outer formation has stabilized. We can escape." How is that possible? Gongshu Isin's cultivation was lower than Gusu Chiodi's. She was stunned when she heard Gusu Chiodi's reminder. However, she immediately used her divine sense and was immediately overjoyed. However, her thoughts were more profound than Gusu Chiodi's. She frowned and said, "Could it be that the Taoist elders have found a way to break the formation?" At the same time, the destructive aura rose from the inner formation again. Xiao Hua, who was flying nearby, was shocked again. He immediately sent a trace of his divine sense into the inner formation. In just a moment, Xiao Hua understood Gongshu Isin's embarrassment. Damn it, this Tsang Longzi is really powerful. No matter how many praises I have, I can't describe the admiration I have right now. Primordial formation, Buddhist formation, and demonic chi. Even I can't set them up with my current cultivation. However, Gongshu Isin is still out of my expectations. She can actually hold on until now. She's also a Confucian cultivator that can't be underestimated. As for the key now, I'm afraid we can only kill the demonic chi and balance the primordial formation and Dharma formation to stabilize the formation. At this point, it's not important how to break the formation. As long as you can escape with your life, that's better than anything else. Thinking of this, Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said loudly, "Fairies, don't worry. I got a demonic weapon by chance. It can take in the demonic qi." As he spoke, Xiaohua's figure flew forward once more, and the several hundred rays of light followed behind him. The ancient ferocious spirits of the profound purity spirit restriction grand formation were like little tails behind him. In the current situation, even if the ancient ferocious spirits wanted to let Xiaohua go, Xiaohua would absolutely not give up, because in his Dantian, no matter if it was the formless Yuanying or the 140 Yuanying, they all grew a lot. If nothing unexpected happened, in the future, he could enter the 5th level of primordial qi at any time with simple cultivation. "Come out!" Xiaohua roared. His voice was like a bolt from the blue, causing everyone to tremble. Soon after, a plate-like demonic artifact appeared in Xiaohua's hands. "Come back!" Xiaohua shouted. His hands formed an indescribable seal. No one knew what it was, but a powerful gust of wind could be heard coming from the inner formation. Whoa! Near the demonic artifact, countless pitch-black flames and demonic qi were born. The demonic qi that was originally wreaking havoc in the inner formation seemed to have seen its kin. Other than having tears in its eyes, the demonic qi was even more affectionate than ordinary people. It rushed towards the demonic artifact. "Gongshu family's girl." Xiaohua stood in the air and hurriedly shouted, "My cultivation is limited. I can only control this demonic weapon for half a meal's time. I don't know if you have the confidence to break this formation. If you can't, while I can still control it, it's better for us to escape as soon as possible." Gongshu Isin sneered. "Sister Chio's control of the weapon is not good. How can I control 2 formations? Don't try to provoke me. It's better for us to retreat now." "Good," Xiaohua shouted. "Then I'll help you again." After saying that, Xiaohua stretched out one hand, and the clear water bottle landed in his hand. His other hand took out the willow branch and waved it. Like a rainbow bridge, the innate primordial water turned into a barrier between the primordial qi formation and the Buddhist sect. Although the explosion of the immortals and Buddhas destroyed a small part of the rainbow bridge, the innate primordial water's control was far more precise than Gusachioti's. In a moment, the innate primordial water separated the golden wind and jade dew formation with great difficulty. Jinren Xiao, Gusu Chioti saw this and really didn't know how to express her surprise. She happily shouted, "You really didn't disappoint me." "Good." Gongshu Isin saw this and also shouted, "Since Elder Xiao has this ability, then I'll leave the formation to you." After saying that, Gongshu Isin activated the weapon again. Under the weapon, when Mountain and Book City majestically appeared again and firmly controlled the golden wind and jade dew formation. The strangest thing was not Gongshu Isin's primordial qi formation. The Golden Light Buddhist sect was originally crazily counterattacking. When Xiaohua's innate primordial water separated the Buddhist sect from the primordial qi formation, the Buddhist sect had already calmed down. Then, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the Buddhist sect became as docile as a dog. Gongshu Isin didn't have time to think about the changes in the primordial qi formation and the Buddhist sect. While activating the weapon, one scroll after another mixed with runes, and even some Buddhist documents flew out of her hand. After the time it took to eat a meal, she saw a thumb-sized whirlpool suddenly appear on the left side of Gusachiote. Gongshu Isin was ecstatic. "Great! I finally found the essence of the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Song Longzi is really a rare Taoist sect senior. Compared to Song Longzi, the difference is like heaven and earth." It was rare for the arrogant Gongshu Isin to lower her head like this. Xiaohua tried his best to activate the innate primordial water, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, "Lady Gongshu, don't just think about worshipping our Taoist sect senior here. Hurry up and break the formation. We can't hold on for much longer." Chapter 3725. What Xiaohua said was actually correct. He was really busy right now. On one hand, those hundreds of light pillars rushed out from the top of his head, covering nearly 100 miles of the Great Formation. More than 100 yuanying in his lower dantian were intensely absorbing the souls of the evil spirits. On the other hand, Xiaohua's mind was even more focused, absorbing the water of the yellow springs into the netherworld sea of blood. Apart from these two areas, the most troublesome thing for Xiaohua was collecting the devil energy. Xiaohua didn't dare to release too much of the devil flame, fearing that he would be attacked by the golden wind, jade dew, and the brilliant glazed golden light Buddha formation at the same time. He could only release his telekinesis first, wrapping the devil flame in his telekinesis, and he still had to pretend to hold that indifferent plate. Oh, in the end, Xiaohua still had to use his telekinesis to control the innate primordial water to isolate the origin formation and the Buddha formation. If it was an ordinary formation, Xiaohua might not care, but this misty mountain formation was too powerful. A rare tiredness rose from the bottom of his heart. Xiaohua's words weren't fake. Senior Xiao, please wait a moment. Gongshu Exian naturally couldn't see too much, but she saw the light beams, devil chi, and innate primordial water. She also understood that a Taoist cultivator couldn't control 3 magic treasures at once. Xiaohua's ability to use such a method was truly extraordinary. She agreed, then hurriedly took out a palm-sized imperial artifact. This imperial artifact looked like a small bridge. Gongshu Exen opened her mouth, and a breath of true qi fell on it. The small bridge produced clouds, and layers of inscriptions rushed out from the clouds. In the void, streams of noble qi rushed out, and the entire small bridge turned into a rainbow bridge, falling towards the whirlpool beside Gongshu Exin. Unfortunately, just before the small bridge rushed to the whirlpool, a strong resistance came from the whirlpool, blocking the small bridge. No matter how Gongshu Exin urged, the small bridge couldn't rush into the whirlpool. Gongshu Exin's face instantly turned red. Qiu Xianzi, Xiaohua hurriedly called out in midair, I'll give you a few more drops of innate primordial water. How about you block this Buddha formation for me? I really can't do it. All right. Gusu Chiodi, who had just escaped from the jaws of death, heard Xiaohua's words and quickly nodded. She activated the copper cup and received the innate true water from Xiaohua. The innate qi in her body surged, and thin layers of innate true water gushed out from the copper cup, landing beside Xiaohua's innate true water. Xiaohua waved his hand and put the clear water bottle into the space. His figure slightly swayed a few times as he frowned at the demonic aura in the array. He already understood that the thin layer of black he saw with his illusion breaker magic, I should be the demonic aura. To be honest, this devil chi was not of much use to Xiaohua's cultivation. Compared to the devil flame and devil chi he obtained at the bottom of the Saint River, it was far inferior. Moreover, Xiaohua also understood that the demonic chi was a kind of ray. Song Longzi wouldn't arrange too much of it. Xiaohua also didn't think that Song Longzi would be able to obtain too much demonic qi. Sure enough, within the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the demonic qi became thinner and thinner. The noble qi that was still surging under the Wanshan Book City gradually calmed down. The Buddhist light also stopped attacking through the innate primordial water. The primordial formation and the Buddhist formation in the inner layer were once again balanced. All right. Xiaohua hurriedly put away the plate and glanced at Gongshu Exin, who was staring at the whirlpool with her eyes flashing with silver light. He called out, Lady Gongshu, the Misty Mountain Maze array's outer and inner formations are temporarily suppressed. You can slowly think about it. There's no need to be too anxious. Unfortunately, Gongshu Exin was already focused on breaking the array. How could she listen to Xiaohua's words? Gusu Chiodi bit her lips and asked, Taoist Xiao, how are Starchild and the others? Xiaohua knew that Gusu Chiodi didn't dare to split her attention to look at the outer formation. He answered with a smile, fellow Taoist, Zhai Xing profited from his misfortune. Now he's refining his yuanying. If there's no accident, he won't need to wait 10 years. He'll reach the 5th level of origin power. Gusuchioti was overjoyed, but then she became worried. How could it be so fast? Isn't it too fast? Xiaohua thought that Gusuchioti was worried about Zhai Xing's Dao Foundation being unstable. He answered with a smile. Fellow Taoist, Zhai Xing's Dao Foundation is very strong. If it wasn't for the lack of opportunities, he would have reached the 5th level of origin power long ago. Now that he's using the netherworld water to refine his yuanying, his entire yuanying has been reborn. It's only logical for him to enter the out-of-body realm. His Dao Foundation won't be unstable. Gusuchioti nodded slightly, but the worry on her face didn't disappear. Xiaohua knew that the more one loved, the deeper one's worries would be. He didn't care about Gusuchioti's worries and said, "All right, Qiu Xianzi, suppress the brilliant glazed golden Buddha formation here. When Gongshu Isin comes back to her senses, tell her that she doesn't want to make any mistakes. I need time to stabilize my cultivation and break the outer formation. Let her slowly break the formation." "All right." Gusuchioti nodded. She activated her vital energy to control the imperial equipment while paying attention to Gongshu Isin's movements. As for Xiaohua, he had long since left. He flew into the air and sat down cross-legged. He released his mind to collect the netherworld water with all his might. When the time was right, Xiaohua withdrew his mind. The remaining netherworld water was enough for Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran to use for their cultivation. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xing naturally didn't know that the netherworld water was collected by Xiaohua. They were overjoyed when they saw the netherworld water disappearing. Both of them closed their eyes and activated their secret techniques. One was reconstructing the yuanying, while the other was refining the ghost skull. Both of them were slowly moving towards the 5th level of origin power. Wong. The entire array was stabilized. Xiaohua's mind also entered his lower dantian. His hands formed seals. Thunderous sounds could be heard from the void nearby. Streaks of lightning swam around the light pillar. When they landed on the evil spirits were immediately torn apart. The fragments increased the absorption speed of the light pillar. For a total of 49 days, Xiaohua didn't stop for a moment. The light pillar rotated above the array and absorbed all the ancient evil spirits into his lower dantian. Of course, it was impossible for the nascent souls to refine these evil spirits all at once. Even Xiaohua's formless nascent soul had absorbed a lot more evil spirits than normal nascent souls. They were all piled up in the nebula, waiting for the right time to refine and truly absorb them, turning them into his own spirit body. Rumble. When the last evil spirit was absorbed by Xiaohua's invisible yuanying, the entire cloud mountain shook. Thick cracks appeared where the mountain ridge was previously. The entire cloud mountain shook and moved rapidly, slowly breaking into 3 parts. The jade-green water that surrounded the cloud mountain had completely dried up at this moment. Deep holes appeared all over the cloud mountain. Roar! A long roar resounded from the east, and then Sun Kong Shangren's figure arrived in the form of a rainbow. Seeing Sun Kong Shangren's refreshed appearance, Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. "Congratulations, brother Sun Kong." "I don't dare." Sun Kong stood in the air and respectfully returned the greeting. "It's all because of Taoist Zhao's great ability. If it weren't for Taoist Zhao suppressing these ancient evil spirits, how could I have such an opportunity? Once again, I thank Taoist Zhao for his kindness. It's not that this Zhao is great, it's that this Zhao's magic treasure is powerful." Xiaohua answered with a smile. "Moreover, this is also Brother Sun Kong's own opportunity. Brother Sun Kong's previous accumulation is enough. It has nothing to do with this Zhao." Sun Kong knew Xiaohua's cultivation was profound, but he definitely didn't expect that those several hundred ancient evil spirits were absorbed by Xiaohua. He nodded and said, "Magic treasures are part of the abilities of our Taoist cultivators. Taoist, Xiao having such a magic treasure is our Taoist fortune. Haha, congratulations. Zhang Daoren flew over as well. Looking at his smiling face, it was also a blessing in disguise. Same to you. Same to you. Sun Kong returned the greeting. He looked Zhang Daoren up and down and said with a smile, I didn't expect Brother Daoren to have such a harvest. Looks like you also had an opportunity. That's right. Zhang Daoren was very emotional. I thought I would be buried in the Jade Fall Yellow Springs Formation today, but who knew? Just as they were talking, Zhai Xingzi's voice came from afar. Brother Daoren, you're really amazing. So much Yellow Springs water was absorbed by you. Zhang Daoren was a bit dazed. He looked at Zhai Xingzi, whose cultivation improved greatly, and said curiously, How could it be me? I thought it was you who used your ability to absorb the Yellow Springs water. I even wanted to thank you. How could it be me? Zhai Xingzi landed in front of everyone with a face full of disbelief. He shook his head and said, Although I need the Yellow Springs water, I don't have the ability to absorb so much Yellow Springs water. As they spoke, the two looked at Xiao Hua at the same time. How could Xiao Hua admit it? He hurriedly waved his hand at the two and said, Don't look at me, Taoist friends. Brother Sun Kong and I suppressed the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation and were almost swallowed by the several hundred evil spirits inside. I relied on the magic treasure that I obtained by chance to absorb those evil spirits. How could I have the energy to absorb the Yellow Springs water? That's strange. Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoren looked at each other with puzzlement. Xiao Hua looked into the distance and said with a smile, Right now, little girl Gongshu is still racking her brains. Tell her about the situation of the Blue Sky Yellow Springs Formation. Perhaps she can find some clues from it. Zhang Daoren and Zhai Xingzi nodded and told him about the situation that they encountered. As for their own cultivation, that was their own secret. They skimmed over it and didn't talk about it in detail. If that's the case. Xiao Hua glanced at Exalted Master Sun Kong and said, Brother Sun Kong, we're not as lucky as Brother Daoren and Taoist Zhai Xing. They might have escaped death because the Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation in the inner layer were slightly broken, which caused the Yellow Springs water to stop flowing. What do you think? Of course, it should be like that. Exalted Master Sun Kong heard this and immediately thought of the danger he faced. He said with lingering fear, It was really dangerous before. Those were evil spirits from ancient times. Chapter 3726. After listening to Sun Kong's narration and Xiao Hua's embellishment, Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoren couldn't help but change their expressions. Xiao Hua and Sun Kong actually faced hundreds of ancient spirits. This was definitely not something two nascent soul cultivators could resist. It was already good that Xiao Hua could use a magic weapon to collect these spirits. He really couldn't split his attention to collect the water of the netherworld. Actually, the most dangerous. Xiao Hua was most proficient in the spring and autumn annals. Now, he immediately drew Zhai Xingzi's attention to Gusa Chiodi. He said, It's still Qiu Xinzi and the girl from the Gongshu clan. How are they? Inside the formation, Zhai Xingzi didn't dare to release his divine sense for fear of causing a change in the inner formation. Now that he heard this, he already threw away his doubts and asked in a low voice. Fortunately, it's safe now. Xiao Hua told them what he saw and did. When everyone heard that there was still demonic qi in the inner formation, they were even more shocked. They looked at each other and rejoiced. This was really a new lease on life. Looking at the three people's somewhat fearful expressions, Xiao Hua simply omitted the somewhat superfluous explanation. Where should we go now? Zhang Daoren looked somewhat worriedly into the distance. The clouds were still thick, and they couldn't see the situation inside clearly. He encountered the greatest danger. He couldn't help but ask, should we continue to break the formation and enter or return home? Although Zhang Daoren asked Xiao Hua, Sun Kong and Zhai Xingzi both turned to look at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "In these dozens of days, it seems that except for this Zhao's cultivation that didn't advance, the three of you have all made great progress. In fact, we've already achieved more than half of our goal of exploring the formation." Indeed, Zhang Daoran nodded. "With this old man's attainments, I only need to go into seclusion for a dozen years after returning to the cave. Stepping into the out-of-body realm shouldn't be a problem. Brother Daren's accumulation is enough." Sun Kong continued, "I'm afraid I'll have to spend a few more days, but I'm also confident that I can step into the out-of-body realm." When he spoke up to hear, Master Sun Kong seemed to have thought of something, and he stretched out his hand to take out a jade box from his bosom and passed it to Xiao Hua. He said, "Brother Xiao, this is the azure dragon saliva that I obtained at the Jade Pavilion gathering. It was originally intended to be used to extend my lifespan, but now that I'm about to break through, my lifespan is already sufficient. I'll give this to you, and it can be considered a gift of thanks for me." All right. Xiao Hua knew that this was Sun Kong Shangren trying to understand the cause and effect, so he bluntly received it and put it away. "My situation is similar to Brother Dao Rance." Zhai Xingzi frowned. "However, in my opinion, since Gongshu Exin has more or less destroyed the formation, why don't we go in and take a look?" Although Tsang Longzi's formation was powerful, he couldn't have set up another powerful formation in his own cave abode, right? There won't be any danger in there. We've obtained the opportunity, but what about the juniors outside the formation? They haven't obtained it yet. Yes, Brother Zhai Xing is right. There's also Senior Tsang Longzi's orthodoxy, which is very important to the Dao sect of the hidden immortal continent. Zhang Daoran thought for a while and nodded. "I agree to go in." "All right. In that case, Brother Sun Kong, I'll have to trouble you to take a look at the situation around the formation, and also call Shui Ping and the others over." Seeing that everyone agreed, Xiao Hua said, "We'll go take a look at the situation of the Gongshu family's girl. If she can destroy the formation, there's no harm in us going in." Master Sun Kong flew out of the formation and released his divine sense. While checking the situation of the formation, he called Shui Ping and the other disciples over. Xiao Hua took Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi to the inner formation. The outer layer's 49 days were harvest time. The four Dao sect cultivators all had different degrees of improvement. In comparison, the inner layer's 49 days were tempering. Not to mention Gusa Chiodi using her imperial artifact to block the Buddhist formation, and not to mention Gongshu Yisin splitting her attention to suppress the origin formation. Just by looking at Gongshu Yisin's haggard and abnormally pale face, one could tell that she was racking her brains to break the formation. Of course, the current formation was different from the one Xiao Hua saw before. In front of Gongshu Yisin, the thumb-sized whirlpool had expanded to the size of a fist. Moreover, around the whirlpool, there were 9 holes of different sizes. It seemed that each hole could be a passage to the cave abode. As for the imperial artifact that looked like a small bridge, it was still at the edge of the whirlpool and couldn't enter. Zhai Xingzi entered the inner formation. He glanced around and flew towards Gusa Chiodi. The falling star in his hand flew out and turned into a star curtain in front of the innate true water, helping Gusu Chiodi block the Buddhist light. Xiao Hua and Zhang Daoran landed behind Gongshu Yisin and frowned at the 9 holes. Xiao Hua whispered, "Lady Gongshu, what's the situation? See for yourself." Gongshu Yisin answered coldly. She didn't even turn around. Clearly, she was very annoyed. Xiao Hua heard this and smiled wryly. He looked at Zhang Daren's expression and shook his head slightly. Gongshu Yisin's heart was in a mess now. It would be strange if she could break the formation. Immediately after, Xiao Hua released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. After a long time, he saw 9 different rhythmic fluctuations within the 9 holes. Xiao Hua's heart stirred. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a gust of wind behind him. Venerable Master Sun Kong flew over with Shui Ping, Fu Jiwen, and the others. Sun Kong saw Xiao Hua and whispered, "Brother Daoran, Brother Xiao, things aren't looking good." "Oh, what's wrong?" Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion. Sun Kong looked at Gongshu Yisin, who was focused on breaking the formation. He lowered his voice and said, I used my divine sense to carefully check the surroundings of the formation. The entire formation is severely damaged. Apart from the inner formation, there are two pieces in the north and south that are also dozens of miles in size. The cracks in the three pieces are pitch-black bottomless abyss. I used my divine sense to look down dozens of miles and felt an extremely cold feeling. It's very strange. I didn't dare to look deeper. Also, at the edge of the formation, there seemed to be a few strange auras seeping out. They seem to be different from the energy of heaven and earth. How many of these strange auras are there? Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. There wasn't any surprise on his face. 4. Sun Kong didn't understand and replied. Xiaohua nodded slightly. He looked at Sun Kong and asked, If I'm not wrong, it should be near the 4 poles where the 4 of us were suppressing the formation, right? Sun Kong thought for a moment and nodded. Brother Xiao is right. It's just, how did you know? Xiaohua smiled. He looked at Gongshu Yisin, who was frowning and staring blankly at the 9 holes. He said in a low voice, The onlooker sees clearly. Perhaps the passage to the cave mansion isn't at the center of the formation. At this moment, a slightly timid voice sounded not far from Xiaohua. Senior Xiao, this disciple feels that this formation is somewhat familiar. I don't know if I can give it a try. Xiaohua looked up. It was Fu Jiwen. Of course you can. Xiaohua knew that Fu Jiwen also understood formations. Since he could see the strangeness of this formation, Fu Jiwen might also see some clues. He smiled and replied, But you'd better discuss it with Miss Gongshu. Yes. Fu Jiwen received Xiaohua's agreement and flew to Gongshu Yisin's side. He bowed and said, Senior Gongshu, this junior looks at the arrangement of the formation. It seems to be the 9-song ghost lock formation of the Taoist sect. Is this junior's guess correct? Taoist sect's formation? 9-song ghost lock formation? Gongshu Yisin was surprised. She looked at Fu Jiwen with disdain. She was about to scold him when suddenly, her eyes flashed with understanding. She immediately turned her head and stared at the 9 holes and the whirlpool in the middle of the holes. After a few minutes, she raised her head and laughed. Ha! So that's it. Song Longzi, you're really amazing. This junior has to prostrate himself in admiration. Then, Gongshu Yisin turned her head and looked at Fu Jiwen. Her face was flushed with excitement. What's your name? Junior's name is Fu Jiwen. Fu Jiwen respectfully replied. Correct. Gongshu Yisin nodded. What you said is very reasonable, but you're still wrong. Senior, please enlighten me. Fu Jiwen's expression didn't change. Gongshu Yisin pointed at the 9 holes and said, On the surface, this formation looks like a Taoist sect formation. Even the spiritual power fluctuations inside are Taoist sect. But in fact, it's a pure origin formation. In other words, it's a Taoist sect formation set up with noble spirit. At first, I only thought that since it was a restriction to open the cave, it must be Senior Tsang Longzi's best formation. Moreover, this Misty Mountain Maze formation is a formation outside, while the inner layer is an origin formation and a Buddhist formation. The restriction to open the door must also be a formation. Who knew that Senior Tsang Longzi was so unexpected? He completely used Confucian techniques to set up a Taoist sect formation. I really don't understand. Gongshu Yisin looked at Fu Jiwen with a smile. You're a Confucian cultivator. It's really rare that you know Taoist sect formations. Come, you're the only one here who knows about formations and how to use noble spirit. Help me. If you can break this restriction, I'll consider taking you as my disciple. A stunned expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face. It seemed that when they were greeting each other earlier, he had already made it clear to this proud daughter of heaven that he was serving Xiaohua. But he didn't dare to offend Gongshu Yisin, so he respectfully replied, Yes, please enlighten me on how to break this formation. Immediately, Gongshu Yisin transmitted her voice to Fu Jiwen as she pointed at the 9 holes and explained to him how to break the formation. After Gong Shu Exian finished speaking, Fu Jiwen closed his eyes and thought for a moment. Then he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of Jinqi. Inscriptions flew out one by one. Fu Jiwen made a hand seal, and the inscriptions split into 3 groups in the air. Each group of inscriptions began to condense into 3 different inscriptions. The size of the inscriptions was the same, so it was obvious that they were the same inscriptions. Seeing Gong Shu Exian's twisted logic, Xiaohua laughed in his heart. In fact, when Sun Kong Shangren said there were 4 strange qi at the edge of the formation, Xiaohua already thought of another possibility. But at that time, the last restriction hadn't been broken. He couldn't speak blindly. As for now, Xiaohua was more willing to let Fu Jiwen gain more experience. Also, using Fu Jiwen to dampen Gong Shu Exian's spirit was more satisfying than Xiaohua himself. Elder Sun Kong, Elder Dao Ran, Elder Xiao, you 3 go to the 3 extremes you were guarding before and see if there are any abnormalities nearby. Gong Shu Exian calmly ordered. Qiu Jiejia will go to the place Zhai Xingzi was guarding. Okay. Sun Kong Shangren had already checked briefly before, but hearing Gong Shu Exian's order, he still agreed and flew into the sky. Xiaohua and the others didn't say a word and also flew up, releasing their divine senses to investigate carefully. In less than an hour, everyone flew back. Sun Kong Shangren first said to Gong Shu Exian, Miss Gong Shu, I found an entrance at the eastern extreme of the formation. I went in to check and found there was another maze formation inside. My spirit sense was restricted when Sun Kong Shangren said this. Xiaohua and the others had strange expressions. Gong Shu Exian looked at Xiaohua and the others and sighed. Seniors, do you all see the entrance? Yes. Zhang Dao Ran nodded. The place I was guarding also had an entrance with a strange presence. My spirit sense was also restricted. AI. Gong Shu Exian didn't wait for Xiaohua to speak. She looked at the formation below and sighed heavily. Cloud Mountain Maze Formation is called a maze formation. Of course, there's a maze formation. Elder Tsang Lang Zi set up 4 entrances outside his cave. Naturally, there are 4 maze formations. Who knows which one is real? Gusu Chiodi's face showed some fear. She looked at Gong Shu Exian and said, Exian, this Cloud Mountain Maze Formation is indeed strange. Since we're not sure, let's just forget it. Our 4 Dao sect friends all got something. We didn't come in vain. Gong Shu Exian bit her lips. Her face showed shame and anger. Xiaohua and the others all got something, but she didn't. She really didn't want to give up. She thought for a moment and looked at the messy array. She seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of her mouth curled up. Elder Sister Chio, Senior Tsang Longzi's mountain protection array has been broken by us. This so-called maze array, I'm afraid there won't be any powerful restrictions. If there is, it will only be some crossroads or mazes. We just have to be careful, and there won't be any problems. Okay, Gusu Chiodi nodded. Then we'll split into 4 groups and choose an entrance. Let's see who has the opportunity. Gong Shu Exian smiled. What do you mean, Sister Chio? You want to leave me? No matter what, I'll go with you. Of course. Gusu Chiodi glanced at Zhai Xingzi and said, Xingzi and I didn't bring any disciples, of course you'll come with us. Then Gusu Chiodi looked at Xue Ping and the others and asked, Is anyone willing to come with us? We're willing. Seeing Gong Shu Exian and Gusu Chiodi split into 2 groups, several Taoist cultivators answered in unison and flew out. Good. Follow me to the entrance of the South Pole. Zhai Xingzi nodded and was about to fly up. Zhang Daoran quickly called out from nearby, Fellow Taoist Zhai Xing, please wait. Zhang Daoran took out 4 jade green toads of the same size and waved his hand. 3 of them flew towards Xiaohua, esteemed Sun Kong, Zhai Xingzi, and the others. He said, This is Reverend Zhang Han's enchanted treasure, the one-heart toad. If there aren't any special restrictions, it can communicate with each other within 100 li. I borrowed it from Reverend John Han. You and I each take one. The method to use the enchanted treasure is carved on the inner wall of the enchanted treasure. All right, Zhai Xingzi agreed. He took the toad and scanned it with his divine sense. Joy appeared on his face, and he smiled. This is a good item. Then, Zhai Xingzi formed a seal and struck the one-heart toad. A jade-green halo shone from the toad. The halo rushed out and landed on Xiao Hua and the others' toads before disappearing. Xiao Hua and the others took the toads and refined them simply. Then, their halos flew out and landed on each other's toads. Chapter 3728. Afterwards, Zhai Xingzi held the toad in his hand and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, this old man will go first. Fellow Taoists, this old man will go first." Instantly, Xiao Hua, Sun Kong, and the toad in Zhang Daren's hand all spoke. Their voices were exactly the same as Zhai Xingzi's. Huh, not bad indeed. Xiao Hua held the toad in his hand and laughed. The other 3 toads also laughed. This old man will go to the entrance to the North Pole. Whoever wants to follow this old man can come. Xiao Hua put away the toad and flew towards the North Pole of the formation. Fu Jiwen, Xue Ping, and several others followed behind. Afterwards, the remaining cultivators also followed Sun Kong and Zhang Daren's disciples to the east and west. Xiao Hua flew to the entrance of the maze formation and squinted his eyes to take a look. At this time, the entrance was several zhang wide, and there were some chaotic streams of air rushing out from inside. The streams of air sometimes emitted heat, sometimes emitted cold. Occasionally, there was also some aura similar to that of a magic treasure pouring out. After this aura, there was even a fishy smell assaulting his senses. Fu Jiwen, what do you think? Xiao Hua didn't rush in. Instead, he stood in front of the entrance and asked with a smile. Senior, Fu Jiwen frowned and looked around. He even released his divine sense and whispered, in Junior's opinion, this formation isn't as simple as Senior Gongshu said. There must be a powerful restriction inside. Senior must be careful. Are you all ready? This old man will go in. Zhai Xingzi's voice sounded from Xiao Hua's robe. He, fellow Taoist Zhai Xing, can go in first. Sun Kong's voice sounded again. This old man will take my disciples and explore carefully. All right, this old man will go first. I will wait for you all in Senior Song Lang Zi's cave. Zhai Xingzi smiled, and his voice disappeared. Fellow Taoist Zhai Xing. After a while, Xiao Hua took out the toad and whispered, Did you hear it? I heard it. Zhai Xingzi's voice came again. This old man's entrance is a bit troublesome. Not long after we came in, we encountered 9 forks. Although Lady Gongshu has the imperial plate, she can only rule out 5. The remaining 4 cannot be judged to be real. This old man and the others can only choose one to enter first. Zhang Daren's voice said with a smile. This old man's entrance has been very smooth. I haven't encountered any forks in the road so far. Xiao Hua glanced at Fu Jiwen and said with a smile, Fu Jiwen, you bring Xue Ping and the rest in. This old man will be at the back. This kind of maze is not this old man's strong suit. It's better for you to break it. Also, you don't have to worry about your safety. This old man has a Confucian cultivator's nation treasure and can take you in at any time. In fact, if you're willing, I can take you in now and let you out when we're in the cave. On one hand, we want to obtain some magic treasures and cultivation techniques. On the other hand, we want to gain some experience, so we don't want to be suppressed into the nation treasure yet. A cultivator looked at the people beside him and nodded slightly. Then he said respectfully to Xiao Hua, If we encounter any danger later, Senior Xiao, please take action to suppress it. No problem. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Follow Xue Ping, and Fu Ji went in. Yes. The cultivators bowed respectfully to Xiao Hua and turned to follow Fu Jiwen and Xue Ping into the cave. They rejoiced in their hearts. Since Xiao Hua had a nation treasure, as long as Xiao Hua did not encounter any danger, they would be able to keep their lives. They had made the right choice in choosing Xiao Hua. I'm going in too, Xiao Hua said as he pinched the concentric toad and flew into the cave. Meanwhile, Sun Kong's voice came from the toad again. Damn it, this old man has a ferocious beast here. Sure enough, the roars of ferocious beasts could be heard outside Sun Kong's voice. Senior Sun Kong, Gongshu Isen's voice sounded. If you encounter any danger, immediately turn back. There's only one path in the maze that's safe. There won't be any ambushes on this path. As long as you leave the area controlled by the ferocious beasts won't chase after you. Ha, this old man knows. Quickly retreat. Sun Kong laughed and hurriedly urged the disciples to retreat. Hearing Sun Kong's laughter, Xiao Huan knew that Sun Kong gained a lot from the Xianqing spirit forbidding Grand Array. Sun Kong could deal with the ferocious beasts inside the maze with just the souls of the ancient ferocious beasts. Thinking about Sun Kong's gains, Xiao Hua felt proud again. There were hundreds of ferocious beasts inside the Xianqing spirit forbidding Grand Array. Sun Kong only obtained one or two of them. The rest were all taken by Xiao Hua. His gains were incomparable to Sun Kong's. In particular, Xiao Hua's invisible nascent soul absorbed several times more ferocious beasts than other nascent souls. Xiao Hua felt that, as long as he cultivated quietly for a while, his realm would definitely reach the middle or late nascent soul realm, or even higher. What was special was that Xiao Hua's lower dantian was extremely lively right now. 100 or so nascent souls circulated their energy to absorb the ferocious beasts. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua used the 5 Qi righteous thunder. When the 5 Qi righteous thunder landed on the invisible nascent souls, it was divided into hundreds of lightning threads. The lightning threads melted some of the ferocious beasts accumulated inside the nascent souls for the nascent souls to absorb. There was also that soul cultivator Xiao Hua who didn't hurry to return to the mysterious dark clouds to cultivate. He temporarily assisted green-robed Xiao Hua in his dantian. These 100 or so nascent souls moved at the same time as soul cultivator Xiao Hua. They were like puppets tied with silk threads. These 100 or so nascent souls don't have physical bodies. The only thing they can do now is cultivate scattered souls. Thanks to Xian Song Zi, he was able to cultivate scattered souls and found a future for these 100 or so nascent souls. However, these ferocious beasts, I'm afraid Xiansong Zi won't have a chance to share them. I'll think about how to compensate him when I remodel my body with human essence. Xiao Hua thought as he flew behind the group of cultivators, heading towards the depths of the maze formation. Xiao Hua and the others flew into the Cloudy Mountain maze formation. The chaos inside the formation didn't disappear. The 4 entrances also didn't close. A few days later, several divine senses swept over from the sky in the west. First, they aggressively swept through the entire formation. Soon after, they locked onto the 4 entrances. In just a short moment, several nascent soul cultivators arrived and landed at the edge of the formation. The one at the front was a female cultivator dressed in palace attire. She had a tall stature, slightly protruding cheekbones, and a pair of watery eyes that revealed an indescribable charm. However, at this moment, her eyes revealed an indescribable anger. The brilliance around this female cultivator dissipated, revealing a short Taoist cultivator beside her. This cultivator seemed to be a little dizzy. He looked around but couldn't tell where he was. However, the female cultivator lowered her voice as if she was suppressing her anger. She asked Dao Cheng, "Is this the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation you mentioned?" The cultivator named Dao Cheng released his divine sense. After looking for a moment, he smiled bitterly. "Senior Xiangfeng, you should know that this place is different from the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation that Junior knows. Moreover, Junior's divine sense can only reach a range of 10 kilometers. I can't tell. If Senior came according to the map that Junior gave, please send Junior there. There should be a temporary cave abode that Junior and the others opened there. As he spoke, Dao Cheng identified the direction and pointed at the cave abode where Xiao Hua and the others were. No need. Fairy Xiangfeng waved her hand coldly. There's an empty cave abode there. Xiao Hua isn't there, nor is Shui Ping and the others you mentioned. If that's the case, Dao Cheng looked at the grand formation that was in a mess beneath him and said, that Xiao Hua has definitely arrived. Moreover, he even helped Shui Ping break through the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Impossible. A handsome male cultivator behind Fairy Xiangfeng shook his head. If it's the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation, how can Xiao Hua break it with his cultivation? Even this old man, together with Fairy Xiangfeng and the others, don't dare to say that we can break it. Dao Cheng smiled bitterly. On the way, Junior has already told you about the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation. The evidence that Junior found is enough to prove that this is the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation. Taoist Master Di Chuan, Fairy Xiangfeng said coldly. Whether this is the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation or not, as long as Xiao Hua is here, as long as Xiao Hua goes in, I will go in. But another nascent soul cultivator hesitated and said, Fairy Xiangfeng, this old man wants to remind you of something. This time, many nascent soul cultivators died in the Yaotai meeting. Reverend Xiangtian died on the Yaotai Mountain. It might not be Xiao Hua's doing. The message you received is very strange. It can't be explained clearly. How can you prove that it was Xiao Hua's doing? It might be a frame-up. Someone wants to take your hand and kill Xiao Hua. Hearing the nascent soul cultivator mention Reverend Xiangtian, Fairy Xiangfeng's entire body trembled. Her eyes revealed an indescribable hatred. She said, Reverend Han, your guess is right. Someone wants to take my hand and kill Xiao Hua. However, although that person's message is strange, the description inside, Xiangtian's death, is true. This person must have seen Xiangtian and is with him. If I want to find Xiangtian's enemy, I must find Xiao Hua first. Forcing Xiao Hua to speak, let's see who he offended. Then the person who sent the message. Who is it? Fairy Xiangfeng looked at the other nascent soul cultivator. Yimingzi, in fact, I have a feeling. I have been restless in the Soaring Pond country. I feel that something will happen to Xiangtian. When a message came, my first feeling told me that this message is definitely true. That cultivator called Xiao Hua must be the one who killed Xiangtian. This is the intuition of us female cultivators. Yimingzi was a tall and sturdy male cultivator. While he was cursing in his heart, he said with a fake smile, Of course, you female cultivators are all sensitive people. This Reverend Xiangtian is your lover, so your feelings should be right. However, this old man is not interested in who is the real culprit. This old man will only follow the agreement with you and help you kill Xiao Hua. At this moment, Dao Cheng hurriedly said with a trembling voice, Seniors, this junior did not dare to place his hopes on the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Now that there is an opportunity, please help this junior. Sure, Fairy Xiangfeng said faintly. If there are any cultivation methods or magic treasures inside, you can choose one or two. What do you think, fellow Taoists? Taoist Master Di Quan and the other two looked at each other and nodded slightly. However, just as the three of them were about to discuss in detail, a few tyrannical spiritual senses swept over from another direction. Who? Fairy Xiangfeng's face changed slightly as she looked at Yimingzi and the others. The four of them clapped their hands at the same time and took out their magic treasures. At this time, the Dao sect cultivators who could come to the Misty Mountain Maze formation were definitely enemies and not friends. Just as the four of them were preparing for battle, another four nascent soul cultivators and four second-level essence force cultivators flew over. Xiao, Li Xiao, Fairy Xiangfeng and company did not speak. Dao Chung, who was at the side, was abnormally shocked. He seemed to have recognized the 4 cultivators who were at the 2nd grade of Essence Force. He hurriedly whispered, "Senior Xiang Feng, those 4 cultivators are the same as me. They all received Shui Ping's invitation. However, they did not believe that Xiao Hua could break the array and had already left. Now that they came back, it seems they invited some seniors." Oh, hearing that it was a cultivator trying to break through the formation, Fairy Xiang Feng relaxed. Daoist Han frowned. He looked at the petite figure with a cold face. That cold and arrogant gaze swept across him. He said in a low voice, "Fairy Xiang Feng, the female cultivator in front seems to be Fairy Su Ming from Ji Province." Yimingzi also said softly, "That's right, the cultivator behind her is Ji Province's Xian Kongzi. I met him once before." While Fairy Xiang Feng and the others were discussing in a low voice, Fairy Su Ming was also discussing something with the 3 nascent soul cultivators. Even the 4 2nd grade Essence Chi disciples were also discussing something from time to time. After a while, Fairy Su Ming flew forward and bowed. "I'm Fairy Su Ming. Is the other Fairy Xiang Feng?" Fairy Xiang Feng took a deep breath and did not put away her magic artifact. She also flew forward and bowed. "I'm Fairy Xiang Feng. Greetings, fellow Taoist Su Ming." "Fellow Taoist Xiang Feng, are you here for the Misty Mountain Maze formation?" Fairy Su Ming asked straightforwardly. "That's right. We're here for Senior Tsonglang Zi's cave abode." Fairy Xiang Feng smiled and said, "Isn't fellow Taoist Su Ming here?" "Hee, we're here for the same reason." Fairy Su Ming also smiled, but she changed the topic and asked, "However, I have a question to ask fellow Taoist Xiang Feng." Fairy Xiang Feng sneered and looked at the arrogant Fairy Su Ming. She replied, "Fellow Taoist can ask any question, but it's up to me whether I'm willing to answer." "Okay." Fairy Su Ming bit her lips as if she wanted to get angry, but held back. "Did fellow Taoist and the others break the Misty Mountain Maze formation?" "No," Fairy Xiang Feng said firmly. "If we were the ones who tried to break the formation, we would have already entered." "That's good." Fairy Su Ming nodded and asked, "Then, did Fairy see the person who broke the formation?" Fairy Xiang Feng asked curiously, "What does fellow Taoist mean?" "That's the 2nd question, right? I'm not going to answer." Fairy Su Ming gritted her teeth, and her face turned ashen. She stared straight at Fairy Xiang Feng and said coldly, "Fellow Taoist, it's your choice whether to answer or not. I just want to ask you, have you seen Xiao Hua?" "Xiao Hua?" Fairy Xiang Feng's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Fairy Su Ming's expression and asked curiously, "Why are you looking for Xiao Hua? Why do you care what I do? You just have to tell this old lady whether or not you've seen Xiao Hua." Fairy Su Ming completely flipped out, revealing her arrogant attitude. If Fairy Su Ming asked someone else, Fairy Xiang Feng would definitely turn hostile. However, Fairy Su Ming was asking about Xiao Hua with a face full of hatred. How could Fairy Xiang Feng not know what happened? She said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Su Ming, you don't have to hide it anymore. Are you looking for Xiao Hua for revenge? Did Xiao Hua hurt your relatives at the Yaotai banquet?" "That's right." Fairy Su Ming could no longer hold back and cursed. "Xiao Hua, that damned bastard, actually dared to hurt my beloved Taoist Chu Feng. If I don't grind his bones and scatter his ashes, I won't be able to dispel the hatred in my heart." Did fellow Taoist Su Ming also receive an inexplicable message? This message clearly stated what happened that day. But even with fellow Taoist ability, you can't find out who sent this message? Fairy Xiang Feng asked again. Fairy Su Ming sneered. "I don't care who sent the message. I only know that whoever hurts my Chu Feng, I won't let that person off. Xiao Hua dared to touch my Chu Feng on the Jade Mountain, so I dare to kill him on the hidden immortal continent." Seems like Fairy Su Ming also received the news that Xiao Hua is here. Fairy Xiang Feng wasn't angry and still asked, "That's right. This old lady has already sent out a message. Whoever can tell this old lady about Xiao Hua, this old lady will give a great reward." Fairy Su Ming nodded and said, "Xiao Li and a few other juniors heard the news about Xiao Hua. When he came here, they specially informed. At this point, Fairy Su Ming seemed to have realized something. She stared at Fairy Xiang Feng and asked curiously, "What? Fairy Su Ming also received the news about Xiaohua?" That's right. Seeing this, Fairy Xiang Feng no longer concealed the matter and explained the cause of the matter. When Fairy Su Ming heard this, she was even more hypocritical. She and Fairy Xiang Feng hit it off, and the two of them actually discussed how to join forces to kill Xiaohua. Seeing the two fairies together, Dao Cheng also flew to Li Xiu and the others on behalf of Daoist Han and the others. Not long after, the two groups also gathered together. Fairy Xiang Feng and Fairy Su Ming chatted happily. Both of their faces showed satisfaction, and in the end, the two of them actually communicated with each other through sound transmission. After the two finished their discussion, they returned to the other 6 nascent soul cultivators. The other side also came to a conclusion. Then, the two groups of people separated and entered through 2 different entrances. As luck would have it, Fairy Su Ming led 3 nascent soul cultivators into the entrance to the North Pole, where Xiaohua was. The 2 groups of nascent soul cultivators who were chasing Xiaohua entered the Misty Mountain Maze, and the entire sky above the formation regained its tranquility. However, this tranquility only lasted for half the time of a meal. In the direction where Fairy Su Ming and the others came from, layers of ripples flashed in the air, and many inscriptions gushed out from the ripples. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.